Chapter 668. Flames ignited behind him and tore through the air. Like a rocket, Lu Qing closed the distance between him and Qian Donglu and punched his face. He imitated the Nile general Sotha, using the fire sect techniques as its foundation. He called it jet counterattack. The shadow on his face grew heavier and the fist in his eyes grew bigger. Qian Donglu suddenly smiled and took a deep breath. His body swelled again, his muscles propping up his tattered clothes. Through the cracks, his pulsating veins, bronze skin, and lightning patterns outlined by a silver pen could be seen. Qian Donglu clenched his left hand into a fist, sending out bolts of purple electricity from his joints and muscles. This stimulated his body like a simplified explosive secret art, but it also contained a dangerous aura. Bam! He swung his shoulders and punched. Attack against attack. Boom! The exaggerated contortions of his muscles and bones were drowned out by the tumbling airwaves and the exaggerated sound of the collision. Purple electric sparks flew everywhere. Against such a backdrop, Lu Cheng's body swayed and he took 2 steps back. The Thunder Sect's martial arts were known for their ferocity. After a long battle, the heavily injured Qian Donglu was still slightly stronger than Lu Qing. Bam! As Lu Qing retreated, Qian Donglu immediately rushed forward. His left leg stepped out and his right leg tensed to deliver a low kick, no higher than the knee joint. Lu Cheng's right fist was still numb from the electric shock. His opponent's movements were swift and fluid, giving him no chance to use force concentration to neutralize the effects. Lifting his hip, spreading his leg, and tensing his knee, he could only match a low kick with a low kick. Bam! As the 2 feet collided, both shoes shattered into flying butterflies, some burning with purple flames, some entwined with electric sparks. Lu Qing swung his left leg back and took a large step back, widening the distance between them. As Qian Donglu closed in again, he outlined a large ancient word in his mind. He didn't use any hand seals, but used it in a simplified manner. Formation. A deep, authoritative voice reverberated. The surrounding airflow immediately constricted and solidified, like invisible shackles, trying to bind his opponent. At this moment, purple electricity flashed between Qian Donglu's eyebrows. The terrifying aura of a heavenly tribulation filled the air again, suppressing all unnatural things. The illusory lightning swept across, and the mysterious air disappeared in an instant. Before the air cage could take shape, it had already vanished. Lu Qing was well aware of the uniqueness of the Thunder Sect. He didn't expect the simplified formation formula to have any effect, but he seized this brief moment to recover his qi and blood and paralysis. His Dan force gushed out. Instead of retreating, he moved forward. He swung his right arm, which had returned to normal, and hammered his opponent vigorously. A thin layer of purple flame rose and covered the surface of his fist, giving it a heavy feeling. At the same time, he hid his strength in his left shoulder and was about to launch a series of slashes. He was going to inject needles crazily into the martial saint, who only had one arm to use. He was going to maximize his advantage. Facing Lu Cheng's attack, Qian Donglu suddenly lowered his body. Like an agile monkey, he changed his position slightly and positioned himself in front of Lu Cheng's right. This made it difficult for Lu Cheng's follow-up left punch to land. Crack! Turning his left palm into a knife, Qian Donglu raised it and chopped at Lu Cheng's right wrist. Purple flames flowed from the cut, and electric sparks shot out. Without waiting for Lu Qing to turn and punch with his left fist, Qian Donglu used the momentum of the downward rebound to bend his left arm. With a bam, he hit his opponent's chest with his elbow. Lu Cheng's prepared left arm swung and turned his fist into a palm. He blocked horizontally and barely caught the martial saint's elbow joint. Even so, the back of his palm was pressed against his chest, making him feel suffocated. Lu Qing couldn't care less about this. His hair stood on end. Without thinking, he circulated his qi and blood to stimulate his body and executed the simplified, fighting, formula. His muscles swelled. With a shake of his left palm, he shook Qian Donglu out. At this moment, his opponent had smoothly retracted his arm. He changed from a bump to a lean, using a long saber after a small knife. Boom! Qian Donglu, who had been thrown out, leaned against the air. His invisible force produced a sound akin to a sonic boom. Lu Qing couldn't help but feel lucky. If he didn't have the ability to detect danger and reacted half a beat slower, he would have been hit head-on and followed in Dragon King's footsteps. Qian Donglu had done all this with only his left arm. Through his grasp of timing, judgment of the situation, and observation of his own body, he had turned something rotten into something magical. Although he was a martial artist who was good at improvising in battle, he was still too green and inexperienced compared to the martial saint. This was a true grandmaster. Lu Cheng's thoughts ran smoothly in his ice heart, not affecting his judgment. Using the strong wind created by Qian Donglu's head-on collision, he shifted his center of gravity, twisted his waist, and circled around his opponent. He swung his arms wide and punched continuously. Compared to before, he focused on the mesmerizing snow steps. Regardless of whether his fist collided with his opponent, he immediately changed directions after a punch. Bam! 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 Lu Qing wasn't stingy with his flame force. Purple flames covered the surface of his fist and sputtered out continuously. This raised the temperature of the surroundings once again, causing both parties to breathe in scorching air. This was the application of Fata Morgana, suffocating hell. Just as dark clouds gathered overhead and the magnetic field on the ground intensified, Lu Qing took the initiative to change his move. He hit the martial saint with a scorching punch and ignited the scorching air. In an instant, he and Qian Donglu were completely immersed in a sea of flames. Flames billowed around them, making it look like hell. In such an environment, Lu Cheng's skin wasn't charred, and his clothes only started to curl. The flames surrounded him but didn't hurt him, making him look like the Emperor of Fire. In terms of fire control, he was confident that he could completely suppress the martial saint. In such a battle, the difference was obvious. Qian Donglu naturally wouldn't sit still and wait for death in the sea of flames. Before his hair and clothes caught fire, he struck his left palm diagonally, a purple seal flashing in his eyes. Rumble! 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 Bolts of lightning fell from the dark clouds in the sky. The lightning seemed to have transformed into a forest, covering the sea of flames. Expressionlessly, Lu Qing condensed a layer of pure ice and withstood a lightning strike. He stepped closer to the martial saint and punched out. Qian Donglu shook his left arm, reached out, and grabbed. Then, he broke the tendons and dislocated the bones. At this moment, the sea of flames was extinguished, and the dark clouds dispersed. Poof! Just as Qian Donglu's palm grabbed Lu Cheng's fist, he suddenly felt a bone-piercing cold. A thick and translucent layer of ice started from his fingers and spread rapidly to his body. Lament of the Ice Queen. After keeping the fire force away from his body, Lu Qing didn't need to use force concentration to balance the Lament of the Ice Queen. This was the result of his experience after the master battle and the changes he had prepared for today's match. Seeing that he was about to be sealed in ice, Qian Donglu suddenly twisted his arm and leaped into the air, spinning at high speed. The drill bit was his 5 fingers that were frozen in the ice. Bzzzt bzzzt bzzzt. Silver snakes of lightning spurted out, forming an illusory electric drill. In a breath, it split the thick ice wall. However, Lu Qing didn't seem to care. He clenched his other hand into a fist and threw a crimson fireball at Qian Donglu, who was in midair. This was the real attack he had been planning for a long time. Boom! Amidst the lightning, Lu Cheng's body swayed and he took a few steps back. The surface of his right fist had turned black. Lightning arcs danced wildly, causing intense pain and numbness. However, he wasn't dejected. On the contrary, he was delighted. This was because Qian Donglu had been blasted away. His face was covered in dust, and his injuries were even more severe. If he hadn't made use of the residual magnetism on the ground, he would have staggered further. This was the first time Lu Qing had truly hurt his opponent since the start of the battle. His energy, qi, spirit, and will were all connected. I can hurt him. I can win. Lu Cheng's willpower soared to the skies as he executed the simplified attainment formula with an indestructible force. He closed the distance between them and Qian Donglu's side. Another force concentration, another flurry of blows from his cloak, and the Lord Emperor's purple flame burned his opponent's body, raising the surrounding temperature. After all, Qian Donglu had lost an arm and was heavily injured. Even though his moves were simple yet profound, and he successfully defended against Lu Cheng's attacks one after another, he couldn't help but feel dizzy. Bam! Suddenly, he flipped his hand and struck out a cyan palm thunder, forcing Lu Cheng to dodge. Seizing this opportunity, the remaining high-voltage electric poles seemed to throw an invisible rope at Qian Donglu, dragging him over. He wanted to return to his home field. But at this time, Lu Cheng leisurely raised his arms and formed a hand seal. This was the moment he was waiting for. The magnetism on the surface of Qian Donglu's body changed. He tried to dodge, but for some reason, Lu Cheng's movements were clearly slower by half a beat. However, this delay gave him the opportunity to reorient himself. Confrontation. Seeing this, Dragon King Qin Chitao nodded, which was rare. Slowness was the essence of the transformation just now. Confrontation. As the voice entered his ears, Qian Donglu felt an uncontrollable tiredness and familiar laziness. He wanted nothing more than to lie in the shade of a tree, close his eyes, and fall asleep. He wanted nothing more than to distance himself from the battle and enjoy the peace and quiet. This was his favorite state, and he almost couldn't extricate himself from it. Lu Qing had anticipated that he might encounter a warrior sage today, so he had prepared several plans. As for whether all of them would be effective, that would have to wait. In any case, one of them was to rely on the confrontation formula and Qian Donglu's laziness. Taking advantage of Qian Donglu's weakened fighting spirit and slow reaction, Lu Qing closed the distance with the attainment formula. First, he struck with his left elbow, then his right fist, and then his leg to trip Qian Donglu. Relying on years of instincts and reflexes, one-armed Qian Donglu actually managed to block this round of frenzied attacks. However, Lu Qing finally opened up his stance. Without making any adjustments, Lu Qing stepped on the ground, turned his body, and crashed into Qian Donglu. Bam! Qian Donglu's arm was swatted away weakly. His chest bones were fractured, and he staggered backwards. Lu Qing took a step forward and used force concentration to draw the fighting formula. His body expanded, and his powerful qi and blood seemed capable of harming others. He swung his arm and punched at the warrior sage. Qian Donglu's eyes glowed. His entire body seemed to turn illusory, turning into streaks of lightning. Silver, deep purple, and green exploded. Lu Qing didn't make any adjustments. He just punched with his eyes wide open. Boom! As if there was an explosion, Qian Donglu sank knee-deep into the ground. Traces of blood could be seen at the corners of his eyes and mouth, and his eyes were filled with confusion. Lu Cheng's entire body was convulsing. Electricity danced on the surface of his body, paralyzing all his muscles. However, his willpower was high. He forced himself to complete a Dan equilibrium concentration, alleviating much of the effects. Then, he punched at Qian Donglu's face. Just as his opponent followed the Dan equilibrium concentration and raised his arm to block, Lu Qing forcibly twisted his waist and shifted his position. In a flash, he was behind the warrior sage. His hands swiped forward, pressing on both sides of the warrior sage's temples. Qian Donglu was an arrow at the end of its flight. He could only focus on his left, but not his right. He couldn't make a complete response in time. Phew! The wind slowed. Lu Cheng's palm stopped. The referee raised his right arm and announced, "Round 2, Lu Qing wins." P.S. Tomorrow is the day to go to the hospital for acupuncture. You only update after 7 p.m., so this doesn't count as not updating. Chapter 669. Second round, Lu Qing wins. As the referee's voice entered his ears, Qian Donglu's slightly arched figure was reflected in his pupils. Lu Qing was momentarily dazed, as though he had just experienced a vivid dream. I won. I really won. I really beat the warrior sage, whose name had shaken the world for almost a decade. Even though he had fought a tough battle and was heavily injured, he was still a matchless mighty one who no one could compete with except for the Dragon King. He was the ultimate big boss of Lu Cheng's childhood fantasies. His white clothes were stained gray by the dust, torn and tattered everywhere, mixed with charred and bloodstains. Beads of sweat rolled down his forehead at a speed visible to the naked eye. His right arm hung limply, and his left hand was barely raised halfway, trembling slightly. Purple electricity danced on the back of his head. His black hair was in a mess, as though it had been bitten by a dog. These were the warrior sage, Qian Donglu, that Lu Qing was looking at. From a different perspective than the battle videos and interviews, he was standing in the position of the victor. He was also human. He could be hurt and embarrassed, and he could not react in time. Inexplicable emotions welled up in Lu Cheng's heart. Suddenly, there was a natural change in him. When he first stepped into the circle of physical invulnerability and came into contact with title matches and top-tier professional competitions, he was filled with reverence, yearning, and worship. This stemmed from his initial yearning and years of nurturing. But now, after Qian Donglu had lost to him, this feeling faded away and a dream settled down. The halo of those familiar names weakened, revealing the reality that they should have represented. A friend who made friends through martial arts, an enemy who competed for first place, a living person, and an opponent who could be defeated. Phew, this is considered the mentality of a mighty one, right? Lu Qing mocked himself inwardly and retracted his hands. Seeing Qian Donglu turn around, he cupped his fists and bowed. Thank you. As he said this, he suddenly felt an indescribable joy, a joy he wanted to share with his wife, teachers, and friends. I can finally say this to the warrior sage. This feeling was so wonderful that Lu Qing couldn't wait to do it a few more times. It made him envision the scene of facing the complete warrior sage in the future, and made him yearn for his next opponent even more. No matter who he is, I will challenge him as an enemy. Even if I lose, I will not be discouraged. I will be crazy for victory. Qian Donglu sized him up and saluted him with one hand. His lips curled into a mechanical smile as he walked towards the Shangqing sect's seating area. This kind of reaction makes me happier than saying, "not bad." Lu Qing thought as he seized the time to recoup his qi and blood, reducing the main negative effects of paralysis and uncontrollable nerves in preparation for facing the second mighty one of the Shangqing sect. Who is he? What was he better at? As the thought flashed through his mind, Lu Qing suddenly froze. He realized that he had no impression of the second physical invulnerability fighter from Shangqing sect. Who is it? Why didn't I pay attention to it? At the same time, in the Longhu Club's area, Chen Qitao was still sitting upright. However, the gloominess on his face had lessened significantly. Ning Zidong, on the other hand, heaved a sigh of relief. She had more confidence in her future development, After the battle with the warrior sage, Lu Cheng's mentality should have changed greatly. Completing the exhaustion mission was no longer a luxury, not bad. Coach Lu Yen said in a low voice. In the Shengqing sex area, Peng Liyun didn't let his mind wander the entire time. Instead, he put himself in Lu Cheng's shoes and focused on watching the match frame by frame. When the match ended, he fell into deep thought, considering what he would do, how he would respond, and if he was as good as Lu Cheng. He didn't notice that someone beside him had stood up. Round 2, Lu Cheng wins. The sky was just starting to brighten. Yenjika suddenly raised her arms and opened her mouth as though she was about to shout. However, as soon as the sound reached her throat, she came to her senses. She covered her mouth with both hands, causing her excited shout to become fragmented and unpleasant. She was in the hotel arranged by the Financial Summit Forum. Her female classmate was still fast asleep on the bed beside her. I almost lost my composure. I almost became an uncultured person. Yenjika stole a glance at Jennifer and stuck her tongue out slightly. She looked like she had almost been caught doing something bad. She looked back at the screen and quickly took a screenshot before the image changed too much. She studied it carefully a few times, copied it with shallow dimples, and sent it to her own email. She took out her computer and booted it up. She opened the hard drive and found a folder titled Fortune Favors Fools. She pasted the screenshot she received into it and downloaded the video resources that had already appeared. She looked up and saw titles such as, A Husky's Physical Invulnerability Preliminary Match, Silly Ching Really Defeats Peng Liyun, and so on. After a few seconds of silence, she renamed the new video and screenshot with sparkling eyes. One was a warrior sage for the first battle, and the other was, Ching is awesome. She pursed her lips and looked out of the window. Suddenly, she let out a soft, "Aya." She almost forgot that this wasn't a title match. Ching still had a battle to fight. Yenjika nodded solemnly and picked up the tablet. Who is my opponent? Second round, Lu Cheng wins. Kai Zhongming had forgotten to complain about the boring commentary. He stared blankly at Lu Cheng's palms resting on Qian Dongluo's temples. It was as though he was trying to break down the scene into countless small sections, find traces of Photoshop, or memorize it in his mind. When Lu Cheng made the great leap and achieved physical invulnerability, Kai Zhongming had a similar feeling. However, it was never as intense as now. Was the mighty one who was pressing his palms against the warrior sage's vital points really the same old-fashioned, cowardly, and unconfident friend of his? If anyone had dared to make such a prediction, he would have played a good joke on them. Even if he watched a person slowly transform and succeed, when he reached a level he didn't even dare to dream of in the past, would it still feel surreal, unlike a dream? Kai Zhongming took a deep breath and sent a bullet comment. My bro. The moment he said this, he received an intense response. The screen almost exploded with messages. My best friend. My big brother. My husband. My child's father. My father. Grandpa. Damn it, what kind of people are they? They're even more shameless than me. Kai Zhongming couldn't help but laugh. The second round, Lu Cheng wins. Upon hearing this, eternal nightfall, Yan Shaoling immediately jumped up and took a perfect screenshot. She then posted it on the forum. I've succeeded in my first challenge against the warrior sage. What's the big deal? As long as you're in the top professional competitions, there will be a similar situation sooner or later. Unparalleled Dragon King pretended to be dismissive of Yan Shaoling's excitement. Yan Shaoling didn't mind at all. The beginning is always the hardest. After this, there will be a next time. Now it's the warrior sage with 30% HP. In the future, it will be 50%, 70%, 90% warrior sage, complete body warrior sage, explosive body warrior sage. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Are you? Are you playing a game? How can you say something like that? Brahman was shocked. Shivering emoji, I'm just applying what I've learned. When I think of the scene that will happen, I can't help but cry. Yen Shaoling changed her mind. Nye Chi. They immediately heaved a sigh of relief and said one after another, it's still stupid Ling. It's still Chao Zi with a touching IQ, alright, let's stop chatting. The third round is about to begin. Unparalleled Dragon King reminded them. Damn, I almost forgot. Yen Shaoling cursed. Who's the opponent? Brahman was confused. Probably. Unparalleled Dragon King glanced at the participant list. Taoist Wuguang. Why do I feel like there's a typo? At this moment, Lu Qing had already seen his next opponent. His silver hair and black hair were split in half. He had a gentle temperament, neither tall nor short, neither thin nor fat. His looks were average and lacked any distinguishing features. Wu. Taoist Wuguang. Lu Qing finally recalled this name from the depths of his memory. He remembered who his opponent was. The sect leader of Shangqing sect, the mighty one with the least sense of presence. Before coming to Sky Thunder Mountain, he had watched many of his competition videos and summarized many useful things. He had made preparations specifically for this. How could he have almost forgotten about him? That's right. What did I figure out? Why do I feel like he's ordinary and doesn't have any strong points? While Lu Qing was racking his brains to recall, Taoist Wuguang was already standing in front of him with a long sword shining with a metallic luster. They were about 30 meters apart, surrounded by toppled high-voltage electric poles. Broken wires crisscrossed the ground and intersected with the remaining ones in the air. Chapter 670. Seeing Taoist Wuguang standing opposite him and the referee at the edge of the field raising his right hand, Lu Qing was still trying to recall the details of his enemy. He felt like he had forgotten something important. The referee looked around and waved his arm down. Gathering the qi in his dantian, he announced, "Begin." Clang! Taoist Wuguang's metal longsword suddenly let out a dragon's roar and left his hand. Electricity swirled around it. Sword manipulation technique. Seeing this scene, Lu Qing suddenly woke up and remembered what he had forgotten. Taoist Wuguang was using a sword, but it wasn't a normal sword. It was more like flying swords in novels. Whoosh! The long sword circled by silver electricity flew out. Accelerated by the magnetic field, it moved faster and faster, more and more powerful. It was like a leaping dragon or an electromagnetic cannon. Lu Qing activated his skill and quickly condensed a crimson fireball. He aimed it at the silver-white lightning and blasted it. Just as the two were about to collide, Taoist Wuguang flicked his finger and the electromagnetic flying sword casually tilted upward, dodging the fiery cannonball. During this process, the sword was full of intelligence. It didn't disobey Taoist Wuguang's command because of the lack of direct contact. On the contrary, it was as if there was an invisible arm between them, wielding the long sword with ease. This was a profound application of electromagnetic force, and it was also thanks to the environment of the Shangqing sect. If it were any other place, Taoist Wuguang would have warmed up before doing so. How could he master sword manipulation if he couldn't wield the sword with ease? Lu Cheng's scalp tingled at the sight of the silver-white leaping up and the crimson landing. Taking advantage of the change in trajectory, he calmly gathered a ball of golden flames with enemy heart-freezing move and directed it to fly diagonally towards the tip of the sword. Just then, the silver-white sword circled nimbly on the spot, dodging the golden flames. However, as the golden flames flew past, there was a slight explosion inside. Under the guidance of Lu Cheng's powerful mind power, the golden flames changed direction and struck the long sword again. The golden color of the 9 rotations of 5 flames originated from the techniques of fire force and golden godly fire. It could be manipulated after being fired. Once a martial artist mastered it, he could make it change direction twice or even 3 times. Although Lu Cheng wasn't a physical invulnerability expert who practiced fire force, and his golden godly fire was just a beginner, his path of blending martial arts and cultivation gave him a higher mental strength than others of the same class. Moreover, he also had the ability to balance ice and fire, which gave him a better control over external forces. Coupled with the uniqueness of the golden flame, he naturally mastered the technique of 2-directional changes in advance. The golden fireball trailed behind it as it collided with the silver longsword. Suddenly, Taoist Wu Guang jabbed forward with his finger and the sword's radiance accelerated, deftly evading the enemy's attack and causing the fireball to suffer a nose full of dust. Lightning leaped, moving faster and faster in the magnetic field. Coupled with the fact that the distance between them had shortened, it had almost reached Lu Cheng as soon as it got rid of the golden fireball. There was no time to dodge. Lu Cheng raised his arms, straightened his palms, and brought them together, sandwiching the tip of the sword in the middle. Layers of translucent ice appeared in his palms, temporarily blocking the attack of paralysis with its poor electrical conductivity. But at that moment, Lu Cheng suddenly had a premonition of danger. He felt like he had forgotten or overlooked something. 30 meters away, Taoist Wu Guang calmly gave up control of the flying sword. He calmly brought his palms together and clapped them together. Boom! A thunderclap exploded in the air, seemingly reverberating in Lu Cheng's heart. He shuddered, his ears ringing, and his vision blurred. He felt like a 1,000-year-old pagoda tree prostrating before the heavenly tribulation. Fortunately, his ice heart had been formed long ago. There were only cracks, but no ripples. He quickly calmed down and instinctively dove to the side. Bam! Taoist Wu Guang separated his palms and pulled out a dark purple lightning as thin as a cicada's wing. As soon as this blade-shaped purple lightning appeared, it immediately crossed the distance of dozens of meters and slashed at Lu Cheng's back, leaving a bone-deep, charred and bloodless wound that extended from the bottom of his shoulder all the way to the bottom of his butterfly muscles. If Lu Cheng hadn't noticed it and dodged in time, it would have hit him directly in the front, injuring his lungs or heart and severely injuring him. At that moment, Lu Cheng realized what he had overlooked. He had overlooked the fact that Taoist Wu Guang had other moves besides sword manipulation. This should have been obvious from the Thunder Sect's physical invulnerability chapters, but he had overlooked it. How strange. In this way, he had both the electromagnetic sword and the support of various secret arts. If he had focused on dealing with the flying sword first, it would have been easy for killer moves like thunder from a clear sky, cloudless thunder blade, to take advantage of the opening. If he had engaged in close combat, he would have to divert his attention to guard against sneak attacks from the flying sword. He wouldn't be able to use his full strength, and he would definitely be no match for Taoist Wu Guang. Lu Cheng didn't dare to use force concentration to neutralize the effects of the electric shock on his back. Instead, he turned his waist and used his footwork, stirring up a gust of wind mixed with snowflakes. He narrowly avoided the horizontal slash of the electromagnetic sword that had escaped his control. Then, as the wind howled and snow fell, Lu Cheng seemed to have turned into a roly-poly toy. He swayed and changed directions in the snowy environment, competing with the flying sword that needed to be controlled. Soon, he gained the upper hand and started closing in on Taoist Wu Guang. But the closer he got, the smoother the sword's movements became. Lu Cheng gradually felt like Taoist Wu Guang was hacking and stabbing with his sword. It wasn't as easy for him as before. Lu Cheng took a step forward. The silvery white flying sword swung down. Amidst the flickering light, it almost cut his back. Just then, he turned around abruptly, his hands forming a seal. Ancient words appeared in his mind. Lu Qing bellowed, "Formation." The airflow contracted and solidified layer by layer, transforming into invisible shackles that trapped the electromagnetic longsword in a cage. From the moment he stirred up the snowstorm, Lu Cheng's plan was to attack Taoist Wuguang in the open and the longsword in the dark. He would first destroy his opponent's best weapon, then engage in close combat with all his might. He wouldn't be able to hold on for long if he just wanted to wear down his opponent. The long sword trembled in place, trying to break free. Behind Lu Qing, two faint purple and crimson fireballs formed. They converged as he clenched his fist and smashed downwards. At this moment, he only had eyes for the electromagnetic flying sword. He felt like he had forgotten something. Not far away, Taoist Wuguang sighed helplessly. With a flip of his palm, a flash of green appeared. Lu Cheng's hair stood on end. Without hesitation, he gave up his attack on the long sword and threw himself to the side as he detonated the crimson fireballs. Bam! A bolt of green lightning struck the spot where he had been standing, leaving a deep crater and smoking charred ground. The scene was clearly reflected in the ice heart. Lu Qing was startled and came to his senses. Damn, I actually forgot about my opponent, Wuguang. All I could think about was the flying sword. When my attention was drawn by the electromagnetic sword, would unknowingly forget about my real enemy, his methods, and even his existence. This is definitely not normal. Recalling Wuguang's lack of presence and the fact that he was always overlooked, Lu Qing had a vague idea. Perhaps this was his innate ability. The higher the realm, the more exaggerated it is. When not in battle, he could subconsciously make his opponent ignore or forget about him, treating it as unimportant information. In battle, his opponent was fully focused and had locked onto him, so the effect wasn't as good. That was why he practiced the sword manipulation technique. By separating himself from the sword, he could draw attention away from his opponent and reduce his own presence. Empress Luo and the rest didn't warn him about this, probably because they had neglected it. After this match, he might not care too much about it and treat it as an ordinary matter. In the blink of an eye, he would forget about it. No, I have to write it down in my notebook. His mind raced. He didn't slow down his footwork, carefully avoiding areas with high voltage wires and strong magnetic fields. He created a feathery snowstorm on the mountaintop, concealing his tracks to a certain extent so that he could treat the wound on his back and the effects of the paralysis. He was also looking for a way to deal with Taoist Wuguang's strange talent. However, the electromagnetic longsword seemed to have locked onto him or was attracted by him. It kept coming at him without getting lost, forcing him to keep moving so that he wouldn't be distracted again. As he moved, Lu Qing used the ice heart to clearly reflect his surroundings. He observed Taoist Wuguang from the corner of his eye, not giving him the chance to be distracted. After circling around, his eyes suddenly landed on a rock beside his opponent. It was a bare rock that had been split in half and was covered in scorch marks. A rock. Lu Qing had a flash of inspiration. He had a preliminary idea. Taoist Wuguang's supernatural ability affects him, but not the environment. I may ignore him, but I won't forget my surroundings. Wouldn't it be better to add a source of information, form a network structure, and give him a reference and a benchmark? After making up his mind, Lu Qing took advantage of the turn and formed faint purple, crimson, light blue, gold, and white fireballs around him. He had them circle around him in a regular pattern like satellites. After taking one last look at Taoist Wuguang's position and confirming that there wasn't much change, Lu Qing suddenly turned around, clenched his fist, and punched at the electromagnetic flying sword that was chasing after him. He clenched his fist and met the tip of the silvery white sword head-on. At the same time, the 5 colored fireballs around him flew out and enveloped the two halves of the charred rock, its front, back, sides, and Taoist Wuguang. Seeing this, Taoist Wuguang lowered his waist and leaped into the air, shooting into the distance like a bolt of lightning. Behind him, explosions rocked the air, sending clouds of dust into the air. Purple and gold flashed in a myriad of colors. As Taoist Wuguang dodged, the electromagnetic flying sword seemed to have lost most of its spirituality and became rather dull. It was hit by Lu Cheng's punch, bending its body and whimpering as it flew backward. P.S. I forgot to set a time for today's chapter. Just treat it as an early release. Chapter 671. After sending the electromagnetic longsword flying with a punch, Lu Qing used his cosmic universe sect technique to quickly form new crimson, faint purple, light blue, gold, and dazzling white. Instead of firing them all at once, he had them follow Taoist Wuguang's footsteps in a chain of bombardments. During this process, at least 3 fireballs circled and circled around him, as though they were man-made satellites or divine immortals. Boom! 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 Lu Qing was like a cannon, firing off a barrage of purple, crimson, and golden missiles, forcing Taoist Wuguang to unfold his body and swim around like a wild goose to avoid the attacks. The silvery white flying sword regained some of its spirituality and once again circled Lu Qing, slashing, slicing, stabbing, swiping, and twisting. It was trying to break through Lu Cheng's defense while he was distracted with Taoist Wuguang, disrupt his 5 flames, and even kill him. However, Lu Cheng's gaze was fixed on the distance, but his mind was on the inside. While paying attention to the target objects around Taoist Wuguang, he also reflected his surroundings. Wherever the electromagnetic longsword wanted to destroy the fireballs, he would fire them first. As for the electromagnetic sword beam's attack on him, he didn't care at all. It was purely based on his premonition of danger. At the critical moment, he instinctively spread out his arms so that his fist, which was wearing an ice crystal glove, hit the sword and sent it flying. The battle went on for a while. Neither Lu Qing nor Taoist Wuguang could find a quick way out of the stalemate. They could only wait for another opportunity to present itself. To Lu Qing, this wasn't a bad thing, but a good thing. He hadn't forgotten that his goal was to wear out his opponent as much as possible. This situation was perfect. Taoist Wuguang's movements and turns were getting faster and faster. His footsteps were accompanied by howling wind and thunder, shrouding the mountaintop in a low hum. Layers of clouds accumulated and hung low in the sky, as dark as lead, oppressing the hearts of the people. All of this was the precursor to an extreme thunderstorm. Streaks of silver and pure green leaped between the dark clouds, slowly accumulating power, piling up a destructive aura. Bam! Taoist Wuguang took a step forward, the flames behind him shooting up into the sky. Black clouds expanded and filled the air with black smoke. He was like the kind of person who never looked back to see an explosion. Without stopping his footsteps, he pressed his palm, causing the magnetic force to surge and the dancing electric snakes to cut through the darkness and slash at the enemy. Lu Qing felt it in his heart. He immediately shook his arm and punched the tip of the sword. The surface of the sword was clear and pure, surrounded by cold air. Bang! The fist blasted through the air and hit the flying sword. At this moment, the sky suddenly lit up. A thick silver-white lightning illuminated the surroundings and struck down with a loud bang. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws, looking extremely ferocious. It seemed to be attracted by something and pointed directly at the tip of the magneto-optical flying sword. The speed of the real lightning was ridiculous. As soon as it appeared, it was faster than Lu Cheng's reaction after he had sensed the danger. It hit the target accurately, causing it to emit an extremely dazzling light. With a crack, it shattered the enemy's ice crystal gloves. Sword-guided heavenly thunder. Rumble. It wasn't until then that the roar of thunder erupted, reverberating around the mountaintop and silencing the surroundings. Ziz ziz. The remaining electric current from the long sword poured into his fist, quickly charring his skin and causing his left arm to tremble violently. Soon, the trembling spread to his entire body. He wanted to break free, but it was as if he was stuck there. After the initial and most violent paralysis, Lu Qing forced himself to hold on. He gathered his remaining strength, gathered his qi and blood, concentrated his spirit, and equaled his dantian. With a whoosh, he pulled back his left arm, severing the connection. However, Daoist Wuguang had already closed in on him at lightning speed. His right hand gripped the hilt of his sword firmly. He lifted it up and struck again. Another bolt of lightning struck. After the heavenly thunder, he seemed to have temporarily lost the ability to control his sword from a distance. Bam! Lu Cheng's dantian qi exploded, his muscles bulging. His fist shot up to meet the attack. First, it spurted out the invading silver-white lightning, then formed a thick layer of ice. Rumble! 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 Each strike of Daoist Wuguang's was faster than the one before. With each strike, he absorbed the heavenly thunder. His sword moves were simple and unadorned, but there was an indescribable mystery to them. Just like the lightning in nature, they seemed to be common, but they contained the most basic and mysterious principles. The 9 tribulations fell one after another. There seemed to be no gap between the sword radiance and the lightning. Although Lu Qing tried his best to defend himself, even using the momentum to raise the surrounding temperature and create a suffocating hell, he couldn't break free. Gradually, he began to falter. Bam! The sword radiance expanded, turning into a bolt of lightning without branches. It struck Lu Cheng's raised arms, shattering the ice wall. Smoke rose from his body twitched, and his legs went numb. He flew backward involuntarily. At this critical juncture, Lu Qing couldn't care less. He threw the remaining 3 fireballs hovering around him forward. Purple, red, and gold flashed in an instant. Rumble! The huge flames and exaggerated smoke forced Daoist Wuguang to move and defend himself with his sword. However, Lu Qing didn't take this opportunity to catch his breath. As soon as he landed, his legs gave out and his body went numb. He staggered and crouched. His momentum dimmed and his breathing became weak. Clearly, he had been badly hit by the lightning and couldn't even perform a force concentration. Yan Zhike and the others in front of the screen either bit their lips or took a deep breath. Their hearts were in a mess, and their hearts were in a mess. Seeing this, Daoist Wuguang spun on his heel and circled around the remnants of the explosion. He lunged at his opponent with his long sword, lightning snakes circling around his body. At this moment, Lu Qing suddenly steadied himself. He straightened his crouched back and punched forward with both fists like dragons emerging from the sea. Darkness appeared around his body. It was extremely deep and serene. Little bits of fire energy were embedded within it, like the bright stars in the night sky. As they slowly flowed, a boundless, and extremely dangerous feeling pervaded the air. This was Lu Cheng's ultimate move, Cosmic Phantom. His earlier display of weakness was half real and half fake. With the help of a secret cultivation technique, he concealed his actual condition and made himself appear weak and numb to lure Daoist Wuguang into his trap. This was one of the tricks he had prepared for powerful opponents before the match. It was a way to turn the tables when he was at an absolute disadvantage. He didn't specifically target the sect leader of Shangqing sect. Otherwise, he might have forgotten about it by now. Bam! As his fist struck, darkness poured out and enveloped Daoist Wuguang completely. The lightning on his body and sword shattered layer after layer of ice. However, they gradually weakened in the boundless cold and eventually dimmed. Whoosh! Whoosh! They first broke through the crystal coffin and then attacked Daoist Wuguang. When the last layer of ice loosened, Daoist Wuguang suddenly abandoned his sword and spat out lightning from his hands. One purple, the other green. Then, he twisted and reversed, turning one purple into the other green, and one green into the other purple. They quickly collided. Without a sound, the light of the stars was stripped away, leaving behind a spherical, black, sunken bolt of lightning. It absorbed everything around it before exploding outwards. The eighth move of the Thunder sect, Yin-Yang reversal, devourer of darkness. Rumble. Light and flames were thrown out. Lu Cheng, who was about to continue his combo, had no choice but to twist his back and throw himself to the side with a gust of wind. Even so, the places where he was brushed by the force of the reversal still burned with pain. The storm eased slightly and Daoist Wuguang's figure reappeared. The wooden hairpin in his Daoist bun was broken at an angle, his black hair and silver strands falling messily. His two sleeves were missing, revealing thick arms that didn't match his age and appearance. They were a bloody mess. Other parts of his body were cracked and charred, and some even showed bones. He was no longer ordinary and was in a sorry state. As his aura plummeted, he raised a finger, dispersing the remaining dark clouds in the sky. Bolts of lightning wrapped around his home ground and struck down like a plow. Boom! Boom! In the silvery forest of lightning, Lu Qing endured his injuries and fought back. Sometimes he dodged, sometimes he moved with clever footwork, and sometimes he swung his fists to parry the lightning serpents. Just as he was about to survive this wave of attacks, he suddenly felt a sense of danger. Without thinking, he took a step back and swung his forearm to the side. Bam! His muscles, which were condensed into ice walls, smashed into a silvery white sword blade, causing it to bend and fly backwards. Daoist Wuguang's electromagnetic longsword had taken to the air again. He had almost succeeded in his sneak attack. With the successful attack and the lightning dissipating, Lu Qing didn't feel happy. Instead, he felt an even stronger sense of danger. Bam! He detonated the remaining Emperor Yen in his body and shifted to the side. At that moment, Daoist Wuguang's figure appeared behind him. No one noticed him. Lu Qing had almost forgotten about his opponent again. Seeing him dodge in time, Daoist Wuguang's face was impassive, neither happy nor angry. He flipped his palm and pointed it at the sky. The purple seal in his eyes shone brightly, penetrating from top to bottom. Lu Qing had just finished his move when his eyes flashed. A bolt of purple lightning formed a dozen meters above his head and struck down mightily. After dodging, he only had time to tilt his head despite his heightened sense of danger. The bolt landed squarely on his shoulder. Bam! Enveloped by the penetrating light, every inch of his bones became distinct. He froze, trembling and paralyzed. The first move of the Thunder sect, punishment on behalf of heaven. Whoosh! Daoist Wuguang moved his fingers and the electromagnetic longsword accelerated again. It shot out like a cannonball and hovered between Lu Cheng's eyebrows. Lu Qing had just recovered when he saw this. He sighed dejectedly and stood still. The referee raised his right hand and announced loudly, "Round 3, Daoist Wuguang wins." Chapter 672. Round 3, Taoist Wuguang wins. Lu Qing didn't feel that anything was amiss when he heard the announcement. Instead, he focused more on assessing his own emotions. Every defeat made him feel dejected, and this match was no exception. Although he had injured his opponent and drained him of his energy, achieving his initial goal, Lu Qing still felt that he could have done better and lasted a little longer. He shouldn't have lost so easily. To be honest, this was the first time he had encountered an opponent like this. He used to joke that some people's presence was too weak, as if they had supernatural powers. It turned out that such a thing really existed, and Taoist Wuguang was one of the best. All the information on him had inadvertently neglected this crucial point, making people think that he was just a weak presence. Once they encountered him, they would immediately be at a disadvantage. The slightest distraction would cause them to forget about their opponent and focus on the wrong target. If it weren't for Lu Cheng's ability to foresee danger, he would have suffered a crushing defeat in today's battle. Luckily Wuguang. Taoist Wuguang didn't practice the secret arts of the dark sect or death sect. Otherwise, he would have been even more terrifying and unpredictable. Lu Qing rejoiced and collected his thoughts. He planned to jot this down in his notebook so that he wouldn't forget it again. Phew, thank you for your guidance, senior. He exhaled, bowed to the sect master of the Shangqing sect, who was of the same seniority as his master, and returned to the edge of the cliff where the Longhu Club was located. Aya, how did we lose? Eternal Nightfall Yen Shaoling slapped her thigh and posted a message on the forum. It felt like it was over before they could figure out who the opponent was. There wasn't a strong sense of regret, it was as if they had never fought this match. Similar thoughts flashed through the minds of Yan Jika, Kai Zongming, and the rest. They felt like they were watching a fake match. As for the Shangqing sect members, they turned their attention to their next opponent. Ghost King Ning Zidong had already stood up. Her skin was fair and smooth, and her black hair was coiled up elegantly. Coupled with her majestic beauty, she was exceptionally eye-catching. No one could tell that she was in her 40s. She wore a loose-fitting navy blue martial arts suit that hid her beautiful figure. She walked over to Lu Qing and nodded slightly in greeting. Lu Qing nodded in response and clenched his fist instinctively as encouragement. After brushing past Ning Zitong, he returned to the guest team's seats. The Dragon King, Qin Chitao, looked at him calmly. He wasn't disappointed, but he wasn't happy either. He quickly turned his attention to the third match that was about to begin. Guijia, on the other hand, was deep in thought with a frown. She seemed to have too many questions that she hadn't figured out. Lu Yen coughed and said with a straight face, "I'm fine." Was this a compliment or a compliment? Lu Qing sat on the cattail hassock and took his ring and phone. He'd wanted to send a message to Little Fairy to share Taoist Wuguang's special ability, but the electromagnetic disturbance had distorted the signal on the ground. He had no choice but to give up for now. He put away his equipment and waited for the battle between Ning Zitong and Taoist Wuguang to break out. Seems like I've forgotten something. Lu Qing frowned slightly. Soon after, he heard the referees start, so he relaxed his expression and focused on watching the match. Due to the heavenly thunder plowing earth, the Shangqing sect's home field setup was mostly destroyed. All that was left were the occasional electric shock zone and a slightly frenzied magnetic field. Ning Zitong majored in the dark sect, so her combat style was very different from the other physical invulnerability experts of the Longhu Club. From the start of the match, she used flickering light and passing shadow to evade the electromagnetic flying sword and pounced on Taoist Wuguang. Her graceful posture and swift speed made her look more like the Blood Clan in Western legends than an evil ghost. Soon, the strange scene of Ning Zitong chasing Taoist Wuguang and the electromagnetic longsword chasing after her formed in the arena. However, with the advantage of her movement technique, she didn't care about the latter's attacks at all. She was determined not to let her guard down, locking onto her opponent who would be forgotten in a moment of carelessness. Sword gleams danced as she weaved through the air. She was as pretty as a jade, and her sword was like a rainbow. The two frontline mighty ones were evenly matched. One of them had strange, ever-changing, and ferocious moves, while the other was tough and domineering, relying mainly on hammering and whipping. However, it didn't take long for Taoist Wuguang, who was heavily injured and exhausted, to fall into a disadvantageous position. Ning Zitong began the battle with ethereal footwork, always managing to dodge the pincer attacks from the flying swords in the nick of time. There were a few times when the opponent almost hit the controller himself. As expected of the Ghost King. Lu Qing watched with relish as he sighed in his heart. Flickering light and passing shadow was indeed a movement technique that required a dark sect majored in. Taoist Wuguang's close combat skills aren't bad either. The unique skills of the Thunder sect are quite refined, comparable to the sword manipulation technique and the supernatural ability of sense of presence. I've got to memorize it so I don't forget. Oh right, where's the notebook we agreed on earlier? TSK, Sister Ning's claw is so cool. The secret arts of the dark sect are like works of art in her hands. Sigh, it's just that Wuguang. Taoist Wuguang isn't willing to cooperate and always interrupts at crucial moments, preventing us from seeing the best parts. What's wrong with that old man? He's such an eyesore. He's affecting Sister Ning's performance. If only he wasn't around. Similar thoughts flashed through many of the spectators' minds. Perhaps it was because of condemned by the masses, but Taoist Wuguang gradually faltered. After another round of intense battle, he finally lost to his opponent. Ning Zitong, the Ghost King, wasn't unscathed. There were several tears and holes in her navy blue martial arts suit, revealing charred skin and flesh underneath. In addition, a sword mark extended from the right side of her back to her neck, leaving behind a hideous wound and fresh blood. This didn't ruin her image. Instead, it added to her wild and seductive beauty. Words like Bloody Mary popped up in Lu Cheng's mind. Round 4, Ning Zitong wins. As the referee's voice entered his ears, Lu Cheng's gaze shifted to the Shangqing sect seating area. Peng Liyun, in his white robes, stood up straight purely on the strength of his waist. His hair was still short and crisp. His eyes glowed as he focused. It was as though countless lightning bolts were striking down from the ninth heaven. Step by step, he quickly reined in his fluttering thoughts. The aura around him grew fierce, as though it was hiding extremely destructive lightning. Where there's yang, there's yin. Where there's life, there's death. The lightning produced by the interaction of yin and yang had the meaning of righteousness, birth, and awakening, but also destruction, and punishment on behalf of the heavens. At this moment, Peng Liyun was the embodiment of the latter. His surroundings grew darker and darker, reminding Lu Qing of his ice spirit, which symbolized the boundless darkness of the universe. However, Peng Liyun was closer to death, closer to annihilation, like the end of everything. Ha! Lu Qing frowned and muttered under his breath. This doesn't feel normal. This isn't the same as the Taoist from before. Suddenly, Lu Yan exclaimed from beside him, Forbidden Sect, Shangqing Chapter. Lu Qing tilted his head and blurted out in surprise, he can learn it so quickly. Comprehend. Lu Yan corrected him, then shook his head slightly. The sect's legacy is still a little different from ours. If you want to comprehend it, you'll have to accumulate enough merits first. Lu Qing asked thoughtfully, then why didn't Taoist Wu Guang show it? He's the sect leader. Do you think he came up with that 10,000 lightning strike, cleansing the earth move by himself? It's just that he integrated it well with his own martial arts, so it's hard to tell. Lu Yan snorted. Lu Qing was stunned for a few seconds. You still remember that move? If he hadn't mentioned it, I would have forgotten about it. Hearing this, the muscles on Lu Yan's face twitched. He looked ahead and said in an almost inaudible voice, the battle I lost the most was the first time I met Wu Guang. How can I not remember? I remember it very well. I remember it all. There's no need to emphasize it so many times. Lu Qing glanced at Lu Yan curiously and muttered to himself. Then, he gathered his thoughts and cast them away. He turned his attention to the last match, the one that would determine the final victor. The referee took a step back. After Peng Liyun and Ning Zitong were in position, he raised his right arm, exhaled, and announced, Begin. P.S. Here's a book by a friend, Ferryman of the Dead. It's about the supernatural. Chapter 673. Just as the referee announced the start of the last round, the center of the arena suddenly turned dark. It was as though dusk had passed and night was coming. Ning Zidong's figure became extremely faint. She wandered in this world as though she had returned to her own country. Her current fighting style was the complete opposite of before. She no longer pressed forward madly. Instead, she relied on her outstanding body movements to dodge or fight in the blink of an eye, not giving her opponent a chance to catch his breath. Instead, she was like a seasoned, professional assassin. She carefully circled around, concealed herself, and patiently waited for an opportunity to strike. Her opponent wouldn't dare to let his guard down in the slightest. This was the mainstream fighting style of the dark sect. It was only then that Lu Qing understood the real reason Lu Yan had allowed Ning Zidong to fight last. After a tough match, she was severely weakened in all aspects. In addition, she was also injured. Such a strategy was indeed the best choice to win. No matter how tired or weak one was, as long as one still had the energy to fight, the dark sect martial artist could still succeed in a sneak attack and turn the tables. In the darkness, Peng Liyun wasn't in a hurry to attack. He wasn't focused on tracking the Phantom King either. Instead, he half closed his eyes as though he was sensing something. He turned a deaf ear to the killing shadows and illusions that appeared around him from time to time. He wasn't affected by them. 10 seconds later, another illusionary shadow protruded. It spread its fingers and grabbed at his back. At that moment, Peng Liyun's eyes suddenly opened. Rays of light gathered in his eyes, so bright that it was as though the sun had descended. Crack! A bolt of lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the surrounding darkness. The illusionary shadow faded away, revealing Ning Zidong's beautiful face. Peng Liyun took a small step diagonally forward. He stomped on the ground, twisted his ankle, straightened his calf, and twisted his knee in reverse. He channeled his strength bit by bit, causing the muscles in his waist and back to bulge. In this move, he used multiple methods of exerting strength. However, they were all perfectly coordinated and merged into one, allowing the explosion to converge into a torrent. Bam! Like a giant swallowing lightning, Peng Liyun turned his body halfway, raised his arm, and threw a punch to the side, hitting Ning Zidong's phantom claw. In the blink of an eye, Ning Zidong suddenly flipped her wrist. With a slight dip of her waist, she turned her grip into a support and blocked the attack. She managed to avoid the damage caused by the brute force of the attack, but she also stopped her smooth footwork. Peng Liyun took advantage of the momentum to pull his arm back and turn to the other side. With his tall body, he released another Thor's hammer, accompanied by flashing arcs and violent silver light. Ning Zidong didn't have time to dodge. All she could do was lean back, clench her right fist, and lift it up to meet the punch. Boom! There was a loud explosion at the spot where Ning Zidong had been standing. Streaks of silvery white light flowed out. Black shadows suddenly scattered from Ning Zidong's body and flew in all directions like beautiful butterflies. They carried Peng Liyun's thunder force and power and disappeared into the distance. Strangely, almost all the power of the attack was neutralized. Lu Qing had seen this move before when he was fighting Dark Knight Bat. It was his opponent's life-saving trump card. However, compared to Ning Zidong, his technique was still too crude and inexperienced. After the swirling shadows took away the enemy's strength, it even left behind an illusory figure. Wasn't that just setting himself up as a live target? Ning Zidong, on the other hand, was nowhere to be seen. It was as if she had hidden in a black shadow or a butterfly. Taking advantage of the chaos, she dispersed. It was strange, and demonic. Sister Ning lives up to her reputation as an experienced titled Mighty One. Priest didn't play around much today. He went all out from the start. It's a complete underdog against a stronger opponent. Lu Qing nodded. He predicted what was going to happen next based on the situation and verified his own thoughts based on the feedback. Peng Liyun watched as the black shadows scattered and flew in all directions before converging into one in the distance. Peng Liyun was not disheartened at all. With a calm expression, he raised his hands and clapped inwards. Just as Lu Qing thought he was going to hear a bolt from the blue, the clap was a dud. It silently summoned a dark cloud that covered the area where the butterflies had gathered. Bam! Bam! A few bolts of green lightning fell like old trees, enveloping the black shadows. The light flickered, and the illusions distorted and dissipated. It was as if evil spirits from the gates of hell had met their natural nemesis. However, at that moment, a figure suddenly appeared behind Peng Liyun. It was Empress Luo, Ning Zitong. Her face was covered in darkness, and her entire body was ethereal. The butterflies that had gathered again were actually her bait. The Ghost King lived up to his name. It was hard to tell the difference between reality and illusion. The traps and loopholes seemed to be intertwined, making it hard for the opponent to guard against. Tensing up, Peng Liyun lowered his waist and bounced forward. At the same time, he clapped his palms together again for another clash. Boom! The ground exploded with a clap of thunder, causing Lu Qing and the rest to feel a little dizzy. However, Ning Zitong seemed to have her ears blocked and her mind sealed. She didn't hear anything and wasn't affected. She was like a real ghost, floating on the light as she chased closely behind Peng Liyun, reducing the distance between them. Bzzz. Peng Liyun pulled his palms apart, dragging out a thin purple thunder blade. Then, he twisted his waist forcefully and turned his body halfway, aiming at the enemy. In the high-speed chase, although Ning Zitong had sensed it, she didn't dodge. Instead, she tilted her body and created a strong wind. Pfft! The blunt knife pierced into her flesh. Purple lightning circled her shoulder and chest. Her flesh was scarred, and the smell of burnt flesh filled the air. Her injury wasn't light. Seizing this opportunity, she suddenly shook her hair, freeing the strands of black silk from their final restraints. Like countless soft whips, they whizzed towards Peng Liyun. She had actually turned her hair into a weapon. 3,000 strands of worry, soul-consuming whip of sorrow. Paw, paw, paw. The clothes on Peng Liyun's arms and the back of his body were torn apart, revealing streaks of blood that were beginning to swell and turn black. Meanwhile, the intense pain was like a torrent, surging towards his brain. The dark sex poisonous force was excruciating. His scalp felt like it was being pricked by needles. Peng Liyun immediately spurted out silver-white thunder force, illuminating the area. This not only burned the poison, but also paralyzed the transmission of pain signals. Bam, bam, bam. Bam, bam, bam. Ning Zitong didn't let her opponent off the hook. She launched a frenzied attack, as if she could capsize her opponent in the next second. Peng Liyun didn't panic. Using the punishment on behalf of heaven, or the Nine Heavens Ensemble, he continued to use his fists and legs to defend himself. After a tough battle, Ning Zitong couldn't attack for long. Just as she took a breather, she was immediately counterattacked. She was completely suppressed by her opponent's fierce thunder hammer. She closed in step by step, and when she finally managed to put some distance between them, she started moving again. At this point, the battle had entered its most intense phase. One of them was poisoned, one was injured, one was slightly weaker, and one was tired. It seemed like the outcome would be decided at any moment. Lu Qing and the rest watched intently. Their hearts were in their mouths as they watched the battle unfold nervously. At times, they felt that Peng Liyun wouldn't be able to survive Ning Zitong's next wave of attacks. At other times, they were worried that the Ghost King wouldn't be able to break away and would be killed by her thunderstorm. The winner would be the final winner of the day, and perhaps even the final winner of the year. The battle on the line lasted for a few minutes. While the audience panicked, breathless, or had their hearts pounding, Lu Qing noticed that Peng Liyun seemed to have carefully chosen every step he took. It looked like he was trying to lure Ning Zidong into the area where she would be electrocuted, but in reality, he would always slip past her by accident. Something's wrong, Lu Qing observed, recalling what happened before to look for clues. Just as this thought flashed through his mind, the situation on the field suddenly changed. Peng Liyun took a step back and stepped on the broken contact point of one of the high-voltage wires. Bam! All the similar points lit up instantly. The electric arcs that were supposed to be channeled to the ground leaped back in unison, exploding with the last and most dazzling light. The wires that extended to the bottom of the mountain caught fire and cut off the follow-up. Bam! With Ning Zidong as the core, the electric arc started to curl inwards, like petals of a lotus flower that was about to close up. With her mysterious footwork, Ning Zidong found an opening and dodged out at high speed. However, a shadow appeared in front of her. It was the shadow of a thunder giant that connected the sky to the earth. Peng Liyun stretched his limbs and bulged his muscles, becoming extremely tall. Using his arm as a giant hammer, he swung his fist forward under the protection of the thunder seals. A gloom appeared on his fist, drawing in all the electric arcs and transforming them into an aura of destruction. After brilliance comes eternal silence. After brilliance comes destruction. Lu Cheng's vision darkened as he heard the sound of his heart thumping. This Taoist brat has learned to be cunning. He knows how to set up a deceptive formation and launch a sudden attack. He knows how to use his ultimate move at the most opportune moment. Instead of being forced into a corner, he won't win just like that, right? As this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Qing suddenly saw light. Seeing light in the extreme darkness was like seeing a volcano erupting, or the sun leaping out of the clouds. A ray of light parted the darkness. A fair, jade-like hand clenched and pressed down on Peng Liyun's fist as if it contained the world. Rumble. Amidst the deafening noise, the natural environment returned to the afternoon. The two figures flew backwards. Ning Zidong was in tatters, smoking, and all her muscles were spasming. Peng Liyun's arm was fractured, and blood was flowing from his eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. When he landed on the ground, he trembled and staggered. Seeing this, Lu Cheng was stunned for a moment. He felt as if Taoist had stepped into a trap. Sister Ning seemed to be waiting for his final attack. Something that he comprehended from the dark sect and the clear jade chapter of the forbidden sect. Taoist didn't play around and instead fell for the trap. At this moment, Ning Zidong managed to do a force concentration and lunged towards Peng Liyun. After a series of moves, she grabbed her opponent and threw him to the ground. Bam! Dust rose and a deep pit appeared. Peng Liyun was lying in it, almost unconscious. With her last breath, Ning Zidong formed a sword with her finger and pointed it between her opponent's eyebrows. The referee looked from afar and quickly raised his hand. Round 5, Ning Zidong wins. The final result, Longhu Club wins. Before Lu Qing could celebrate, a figure leaped out in front of him. It was Lu Yan, running and waving his fists in an exaggerated manner. He looked nothing like a middle-aged man in his 40s or 50s. Chapter 674. F***CK, aren't you afraid of getting beaten up? Lu Cheng, who was supposed to be celebrating, was shocked by Coach Lu Yan's reaction. He forgot what he was supposed to do. The Shengqing sect substitutes didn't look too happy. Even the monks, Yun Yan and Ming He, had unfriendly looks in their eyes. If a fight breaks out, the referee won't be able to stop it. You're in your 40s or 50s and have seen all kinds of storms. Do you have to be so agitated? Look at Sister Ning and the Dragon King. They're just like kids. Lu Qing subconsciously complained. He turned his gaze and saw Empress Luo, Ning Zitong, walking back. He quickly went up to her and praised her with a smile. I thought you would lose that move just now, Sister Ning. Supported by her disciple, Guojie, Ning Zitong replied with a smile, I was waiting for that move of his. Otherwise, I wouldn't have lasted much longer. How did you know Ping Liyun would use that move? Lu Qing blurted out in surprise. Ning Zitong took a deep breath to cover up the pain in her body. She chuckled and said, given his personality, he would definitely use it unless he didn't fight or didn't gain anything. How could he resist not using it, trying it, and putting it into practice? Why does she sound so familiar? Lu Qing was shocked again. There was nothing wrong with describing priest in this way. But to say that everyone knew about it, looking at Lu Qing's dumbfounded expression, Ning Zitong half joked and half explained, do you think we don't research our juniors' personalities, habits, and fighting styles? After confirming that Ping Liyun had a higher chance of winning, I started thinking about many things. I've eaten salt before. Anyway, I'm very knowledgeable. TSK, as expected of the previous mighty ones. Priest is being targeted. What a wily old fox. Lu Qing was enlightened. Immediately, he had a question that he was too embarrassed to ask. What kind of personality do I have in the eyes of the older martial artists? What kind of habits do I have? What kind of fighting style do I belong to? At this moment, Ning Zitong was disturbed by Lu Yan's celebration. She glared at him. This person is really the same as before. Don't worry about him. If he gets beaten up later, don't worry about him either. All right. Before Lu Qing could finish his sentence, he saw the Dragon King, Chen Qitao, who had been sitting steadily like a mountain with his sternum broken, slowly stand up. His face was solemn, but he seemed to be impatient as he walked towards the Shangqing sect seats. After this match, the Longhu Club's World's #1 title was in the bag. Chen Qitao stopped in front of Taoist Wu Guang and cupped his hands. Then, he went to warrior sage Qian Donglu and did the same without any expression on his face. In a trance, Lu Qing seemed to smell a little joy and smugness, but he also felt that it was his imagination. If the Dragon King lost and the warrior sage came to greet him, he would definitely leave in a huff and wouldn't consider anything else. However, the warrior sage was not only lazy, he was also someone who cared a lot about his reputation and image. As he pondered, Lu Qing saw Qian Donglu return the greeting gracefully and say a few words of congratulations and modesty, even though his face was dark and gloomy. Excellence in one, complexity in a variety. Chen Qitao nodded slightly and didn't say anything else. He repeated his words, looked around, nodded in acknowledgement, and turned to leave. Lu Qing vaguely saw warrior sage Qian Donglu's forehead twitch a little. At the same time, he caught a glimpse of Coach Lu Yan celebrating in front of the Shangqing sect members. He paused in confusion and sized them up. He looked lost, as though he had forgotten his original goal. No one noticed that after the Dragon King cupped his hands, Taoist Wu Guang let out a long sigh and slowly walked towards the passageway leading down the mountain. Lu Qing looked around, gathered up his mixed feelings of joy and emotion, and came to Ping Liyun's side. Before he could open his mouth, the young martial artist, who was always in a daze, said in a slightly confused tone, "That's right. I think I can win this match, haha, this kind of Taoist is rare." Lu Qing almost laughed out loud. He replied seriously, "You're being targeted. Empress Luo is waiting for you to use that move." "I see. If only I had waited a little longer, perhaps the outcome would have been different." Compared to Ning Zitong, who needed support, Ping Liyun was at least able to walk and jump despite his serious injuries. He couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. Lu Qing couldn't help but grumble, "Why didn't you tell me that you've comprehended the Forbidden Sect, Shangqing chapter? Didn't I tell you?" Peng Liyun's attention was diverted. He frowned and fell into deep thought. Then he answered his own question. I was just about to type this a while ago when I suddenly thought of a recent astronomical discovery. That was it. Then, as usual, Lu Qing was about to complain when Peng Liyun retracted his thoughts and sighed with a smile. Otherwise, you would have left me in the dust. You created your own path, mixing martial arts and cultivation. After reaching physical invulnerability, you improved the fastest among the three of us. Lu Qing didn't hide his path from Peng Liyun and Renli. With their current status, strength, and insight, they would be able to hear and see something. So you succeeded in comprehending it. Lu Qing wanted to cover his face and sigh. Taoist is really hot on my heels. In today's match, Warrior Sage, who had the home field advantage, was indeed better than Dragon King. Wuguang Taoist was also slightly better than Empress Luo. Lu Qing was the only one who could beat Taoist by a little. Based on the analysis of the cards, the chances of Longhu's side winning were next to none. However, by relying on targeted arrangements and accurate judgment when Yun Yan gave up on Peng Liyun, Longhu still won by a hair's breadth in the end. I'm about to become the champion of my first top-level professional tournament. I'm about to become a member of number 1 in the world. Lu Qing felt as though he had just woken up from a dream. He was momentarily stunned. Perhaps it was because he had just participated in a match, but he wasn't emotionally prepared enough. Since they were in someone else's sect, the members of Longhu Club didn't stay long. They quickly went down the mountaintop and met up with their respective assistants. You're so happy. Lu Qing glanced at Almond's expression and asked casually as he sat by the window. Almond didn't hide her joy. Smiling, she said, number 1 in the world. And we have a bonus. This isn't a small amount. No wonder. Lu Qing nodded in realization. No wonder you're happier than me. At this moment, his phone signal had been restored. He had received many congratulatory messages. In a flash, Lu Qing saw Yenjika setting off firecrackers expression. You're the champion of your first top-level professional tournament. That's exactly what I thought. Lu Qing sighed while covering his face. I'm still a little dazed after just one match. You'll get used to it. There will be more in the future. Covering mouth and laughing expression, Yenjika replied. Tell me. Have you ever dreamed of becoming the champion of a top-level professional tournament? Does this count as your first dream coming true? I have. But this time doesn't count. Wait until I become the main force. Clenching fist expression, Lu Qing replied. Yeah. Eyes shining expression, Yenjika replied. Then let me ask you, how does it feel to fight the warrior sage? I'm still a distance away from him. I'm thinking, could Priest be the illegitimate son of the warrior sage? They're really similar in some ways. Lu Qing snickered. He said he would use his left hand to fight me, and he really did use his left hand most of the time. Even if his right arm was injured, he still had a lot of options. It wasn't that the warrior sage's left hand wasn't powerful. It was comparable to other people's well-honed physical invulnerability secret arts. But there was no need to be so limited. Sect style, I guess. Yenjika replied hesitantly. She then asked with some doubt, what about fighting Taoist Wuguang? I always felt that this senior was nothing special. How did he become the leader of Shangqing sect and a titled mighty one? Lu Qing recalled carefully and suddenly realized. He used the sword manipulation technique. He had the supernatural ability to make people forget and ignore him. I have to record it in my notebook. I almost forgot about it. Luckily, Kuku reminded him. He quickly pulled out his notebook, intending to write down what he had learned and experienced. So impressive. Oh right, what's with the notebook? You've never mentioned it before. Dumbstruck expression, Yenjika replied. Lu Qing scratched his head and smiled foolishly. I've mentioned it before. It's a notebook that records ordinary details. For example, things between us, the chat records I often send, and he even kept and collected these, much more detailed than me. Yenjika's mouth was half open and her eyes were shining. She said, "Come, let me appraise it." The couple reminisced about the sweet memories of the past. Their conversation wandered until the girl left for the summit. After chatting with Kai Zhongming and the others for a while, Lu Qing put away his phone and looked out of the window. The mountains were clear and misty, surrounded by clouds. What a beautiful day. He couldn't help but sigh. The next step was to wait for Ku to return to China for the winter holidays. Chapter 675. After a short rest and stabilizing of their injuries, the Longhu Club members left the hotel on the coaster and began their journey back south. By the time they reached Huaqing, it was already late at night. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was the middle of the night. I'll sleep in the club's room tonight. Lu Qing walked out of the car and looked up at the sky. Dragon King, Chen Qitao, and Empress Luo, Ning Zitong, were both severely injured. They alighted at the club's affiliated hospital. Although their self-healing abilities were strong and they could recover quickly by themselves, as martial artists, they had to have enough self-awareness. That is, if they could recover a little earlier, they had to do so. If they could reach their peak condition a little earlier, they had to do so earlier. Accidents wouldn't wait for you, and neither would your enemies. Any mighty one with rich experience in war-torn zones understood this, including Chen Qitao, Geezer Shi, Lu Cheng, Peng Liyun, and Ren Li. Therefore, using modern medical technology to speed up the recovery of injuries was a natural choice. Even the proud and awkward Dragon King wouldn't reject it. Hearing Lu Cheng's words, Coach Lu Yen shook his head and muttered, "At times like this, I need the bed I'm most familiar with." With that, he got his personal chauffeur to drive the SUV over and drove away from the entrance. "All right, I'll get old Zhao to rest first." Alman turned around and jogged a few steps to inform the chauffeur, Zhao Zhenhua. "Let him give you a ride," Lu Qing instructed with a smile. "It's fine, I'll sleep in the club too. I have a room in the assistant team. It's already 2 in the morning. Instead of going back and forth, I might as well get more sleep." Alman was in a good mood. Lu Qing didn't nag her. After seeing that Guijie had also chosen to stay in the club, he passed through the guarded door and took the elevator to the 5th floor. He planned to tidy up and rest. Yenjika had just finished her dinner and was listening to the upcoming meeting. Lu Qing, who was full of energy after a deep sleep in the car, suddenly felt a little bored. At this hour, other than a few night owls, no one he knew was active. Lu Qing stood by the window and looked at the lake in the distance. He looked at the flashing neon lights and the quiet and cold darkness. For some reason, he felt like he was the only one sober when everyone else was drunk. Priest didn't relax at all. Instead, he used me as a small target and exploded with even stronger and more persistent motivation. This time, they were able to win against the High Clarity sect mainly because of luck. If their superclass Daoist Yun Yen was not injured, everything would definitely be different. I did pretty well in this match and defeated the warrior saint, who only had a sliver of health left. However, the gap between us was still very obvious. He had to guard against arrogance and rashness, and continue to work hard. Lu Qing was suddenly in high spirits. He picked up his phone and sent a message to his little fairy. "I slept too much. I'm going to train. I have a big goal. I want to catch up with the Dragon King and the Warrior Sage. After a while, Yenjika sent a smiley face emoji. Does that mean we should get high? Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. He put away his phone, changed into his martial arts suit, and walked down the safety passage to the bottom floor. He passed through the cloister and arrived at the entrance of the volcano laboratory. There were people on duty 24 hours a day, which was the Dragon King's request. After keying in the password and going through the scan, Lu Qing entered this place that had a sci-fi feel to it. He instructed the staff to activate volcano mode. In one of the silver-white metal rooms, the heat was slowly eroding, gradually becoming scalding hot. Before long, the density of the air changed, causing the light to turn into a haze. Lu Cheng's long and deep breaths began to slow down. It seemed that he had to filter the air before he dared to let the air into his body to prevent it from burning his fragile body. Red and orange colors swam before his eyes. Lu Qing felt as if he was completely engulfed in flames. His skin and pores were burning painfully. Invigorated, he activated Emperor Yen Force and controlled the flames around him. He tamed them like a child's toy and let them roam happily on his clothes. The temperature rose higher and higher until it reached a limit. Lu Qing endured the burning sensation all over his body, got into a stance, and started practicing his punches and kicks. After the battle with the warrior sage, he realized that his opponent's ability to control the environment was very strong. Unlike himself, his supernatural ability and heaven and earth blessing were simply mixed together and didn't achieve the effect of 1 + 1 = 2. More importantly, the warrior sage had turned his own experience, thoughts, and understanding into moves that were closely connected to his surroundings. Therefore, it was mysterious and full of hidden changes. It was very much like the connection between man and nature. This is something I can't compare to him in. Apart from the training of my mind, I can't slack off in other areas. As he thought about it, Lu Qing became more serious in his training. There wasn't a single drop of sweat on his body because it evaporated as soon as it came out. After an unknown period of time, he finally felt tired. He stopped his training and turned off volcano mode from the inside. Not bad. He smiled and warmed up his punches and legs. He slowly walked out of the laboratory and saw Guijia outside. Guijia expected to see Lu Qing coming for morning training, but she didn't expect him to leave. She was a little stunned and blurted out, "So early?" "You're pretty early too," replied Lu Qing with a smile. She's indeed a martial arts fanatic. Just watching from the side made her work harder. Guijia frowned slightly and didn't say anything else. She stepped into the volcano laboratory. Lu Qing laughed and walked into the quiet and empty corridor. The sky was still dark. The moon was low, and the stars were low. The faint light shone in quietly, dragging his shadow along. There was a hint of excitement in his tiredness. Lu Qing felt the cool breeze. His footsteps suddenly became lighter, as if the morning sun was coming after a long journey. At this moment, he had that feeling of, my future is not a dream. The next day was Monday. As usual, Lu Qing participated in the guidance class of the reserve team as a physical and vulnerability mighty one. Unexpectedly, he saw a familiar face among Tu Zheng and the others. It was the elegant and handsome Li Xiaoyuan, who looked like an immortal with his long hair draped over his shoulders. Li Xiaoyuan, the Li Xiaoyuan whose aesthetic taste had always left him dumbfounded, the Li Xiaoyuan whom he had met at the Martial Sage Candidate Challenge tournament in Yanling. Isn't he from Haiyuan Club? Lu Qing muttered to himself, but he didn't show it on his face. Only when the guidance class ended did he stop Li Xiaoyuan and drag him to a corner. You're here to observe. Exchange learning, replied Li Xiaoyuan with a smile. Li Xiaoyuan chuckled and replied, the higher-ups said that we can barely be considered as part of the same system and have some connections, so we need to interact more. So I was sent here. Lu Cheng's mouth twitched. I just poached Optimus Prime, and now I'm sending you here. Are you trying to make enemies? SSS, you guys will fight. Li Xiaoyuan seemed to be shocked. He widened his eyes and asked, but it wasn't clear if he was really afraid or just joking. Lu Cheng's face darkened. How would a physical invulnerability mighty one have the time to deal with you? Have some dignity. Following which, he pouted and pointed at Jia Lu and the rest. I'm afraid the members of the reserve team will get hot-blooded. They. Li Xiaoyuan followed Lu Cheng's gaze, ran his fingers through his hair, and clicked his tongue. Then, he replied with interest, that's pretty good. Why does this guy look like he's not afraid of trouble? To think that he looks like Renli, quiet and gentle. Lu Qing took a deep breath and invited Li Xiaoyuan out for seafood as a host. In a seafood restaurant that Lu Qing had verified, Li Xiaoyuan was holding a mantis shrimp that was much bigger than a palm. He smiled and said, I heard that there's a special way to eat this. You can use a pair of chopsticks to get rid of the shell. Isn't that simple for us? Lu Qing chuckled and pressed down with his finger. A faint purple line of fire spread rapidly, and the mantis shrimp's hard shell opened completely, revealing the plump and fair flesh. Lu Qing stuffed it into his mouth. The light taste of salt mixed with the freshness and sweetness of the shrimp echoed perfectly in his mouth, making him sigh in satisfaction. This move. Li Xiaoyuan glanced at it and suddenly thought of something. Back then, in the Warrior Sage Challenge Tournament, there was a mighty one with physical invulnerability in the first challenge tournament. I heard that they wanted you to be their guest this year. I don't think I'm available. Lu Qing shook his head and smiled. Actually, there are quite a few outstanding martial artists in the first challenge tournament. But that's it. Li Xiaoyuan shook his wrist and shook off the mantis shrimp's hard shell. He said as he ate, Yi Yaoting is still at 6th pin. She's the same age as me. Jiang Lan is also stuck here. It's impossible for her to reach physical invulnerability. I hope she can reach the inhuman stage soon. That guy who defeated you, Wang something, just reached 7th pin. Not bad. Speaking of this, he suddenly sighed with emotion. If I hadn't come to Guangnan to study, joined the martial arts club, and was not chosen by Hai Yuan, I'd probably be like them now. It was really good back then. We were carefree all day long. Other than practicing martial arts, we also often caused trouble. When we were eating at the food stall, we had a group fight with some gang members not far from here. We beat them until their bones were broken. You don't look like a gentleman at all. Lu Qing was reminded of his college life and couldn't help but shake his head and laugh. Li Xiaoyuan also laughed and said, I've always been a person who doesn't talk nonsense when I can fight. Is this the gangster version of banished immortal? Lu Qing secretly complained. Then why did you go to Hai Yuan? With your style, you should come to Longhu to practice the fire sect. Well, compared to a frontal attack, I prefer to attack from the side. Li Xiaoyuan answered frankly and self-deprecatingly. Lu Qing almost laughed out loud. He had a good chat with Li Xiaoyuan on similar topics. After all, they had known each other for a long time and were both from the martial arts circle in the university. After eating and drinking, Li Xiaoyuan glanced at Lu Qing and tapped the rim of the cup. He sighed as if he didn't mean it. I hope I can make the great leap and reach physical invulnerability before you get the title. As soon as he said this, Lu Qing suddenly had a feeling that the bright moonlight had illuminated 4 years and illuminated countless different paths. At that time, who would have thought that he would meet Li Xiaoyuan in Guangnan today? One of them was at physical invulnerability and the other was at inhuman. Chapter 676. Touched by Li Xiaoyuan's hope, Lu Qing gave him his encouragement and blessings. The visit of a friend he wasn't familiar with but had known for a long time, as well as the miraculous fact that both of them were in the same circle, triggered his nostalgia for the past and the throbbing of his heart when he first stepped into the ring. It was a perfect reflection of last night's reinvigorated thought of, my future is not a dream. In such a state, he was in a good mood, a little tipsy-like before he quit drinking. So much so that after sending Li Xiaoyu into the apartment arranged by the Longhu Club, he even took a stroll along the bridge by the river. He even climbed up to take a picture of the dazzling city that never sleeps for Yanzhike. The next day, in the SUV heading to Longhu Club, Lu Qing sat upright with his eyes half closed, as though he was resting. Alman flipped through her notebook, glanced at Lu Qing, and said softly, "Mr. Lu, you have to go to the conference room on the 5th floor at 9:10 a.m. There are a few guests." "What guests?" Lu Qing didn't open his eyes, and asked calmly. Alman had already prepared what to say. Smiling, she replied, "Guests from 2 game companies." Lu Qing expressed his doubts with a single syllable. "Why are the game companies looking for me? I have shares in them, the kind that belongs to the board of directors?" "It's like this," Alman explained with a smile, "your current endorsement contract and portrait rights are being handled by the foreign affairs team. They're going through the club's procedures. Recently, they've negotiated 2 game contracts. One of them is a console fighting game called The Great Martial Artist. They've spent a lot of money to obtain the authorization of most of the physical invulnerability experts. This allows ordinary people to control different mighty ones to compete for top titles. So they need me to work with them on the data modeling and the design of moves." Lu Qing had played similar games before. The once popular King of Fighters belonged to this category, so he was no stranger to the game. He already knew what was going on. "Should be." Alman gave a positive answer and continued, "The other one is called League of the Strong. It should be a real-time battle game for mobile phones." Lu Qing nodded slowly and said, "Then tell them in advance not to waste too much of my time. This kind of thing couldn't be done by an assistant." "Okay," Alman replied calmly. After morning training and breakfast, Lu Qing changed into clean clothes and arrived at the conference room on the 5th floor on time. He saw the game company staff sitting on both sides of the table. "Good morning, Mr. Lu, sorry for troubling you." One of the men wearing frameless glasses stood up and greeted him. "Of course." Lu Qing didn't put on airs. Smiled. "What do you need me to do?" "Actually, we have already built a model based on your recent few physical invulnerability level battles and recreated the effects. However, as you have participated in too few battles, we are afraid that we might overlook something. Therefore, we still have to trouble you to do a simple data collection. Don't worry, it won't involve anything too specific." The man wearing rimless glasses explained with a smile, "The other thing is the 3D model of your appearance and the design of the special celebration action." "No problem," said Lu Qing after a short pause. After a while, all the problems were solved. His unique celebration action was also set to a long howl to the sky, spurting to the starry sky. When the other team had also achieved their goal, they didn't dare to waste Lu Cheng's time. They all got up and left. "Thank you so much, Mr. Lu. This is our internal test. Just treat it as a demo. If you're free, you can play a few rounds and give us your feedback. Especially the parts about yourself, so that we can adjust them in time." The man wearing half-rimmed glasses bowed and handed Lu Qing a disc. On it was written, "The Great Martial Artist." From their previous conversation, he could tell that Lu Qing was a gamer. "We'll send you the demo as soon as possible," said the producer of League of the Strong. "Sure." Lu Qing took the disc and watched them leave. When the door was closed, the conference room was empty again. He was silent for a few seconds. Then, with great interest, he walked to the projection screen and inserted the disc into the mainframe. I wonder what level they've chosen for me. Lu Qing sat down cross-legged and watched the screen light up. The logo flashed. Soon, he entered the selection interface and saw more than 100 avatars of physical and vulnerability experts. Unsurprisingly, he chose himself first. This face looks a little stiff. Lu Qing curled his lips. Then, he glanced at the screen and pressed the random button. After a series of flashes, the screen stopped at Dragon King. What a coincidence. Dragon King must be one of the strongest. Just nice to compare my situation. Lu Qing was delighted and began the battle. Damn, so strong. Even with my control, I still lost to Dragon King. It doesn't show the characteristics of my combination of martial arts and cultivation. No, I have to get serious. After 7 or 8 rounds, he suddenly raised his arm and waved his fist in excitement. On the screen, the Dragon King slowly fell to the ground with a bloody nose and a swollen face. Lu Qing himself was standing with a finger to his mouth. At this moment, the door of the conference room suddenly opened. Chen Qitao, dressed in dark green, walked in. His gaze was cast on the screen from a distance of about 10 meters. Lu Qing was stunned. I didn't even notice someone approaching. As expected of Dragon King, Chen Qitao stared at the screen and then slowly looked at Lu Qing. His expression didn't change, but his footsteps paused. Would you believe me if I said it was random? Lu Qing's mouth twitched as he muttered to himself blankly. On the flight from Brudale to Huaqing, Yanjika put down her first-class seat and planned to sleep under the blanket. When I wake up, we'll be landing soon, she thought to herself. According to her original plan, she was supposed to return to Shushan and spend some time with her family before heading south. However, on the day of the ticket booking, she unexpectedly chose Huaqing. It must be because someone's willpower was too strong and produced a curse effect. Yes, that must be it, Yanjika muttered to herself. She began to empty her mind and fell into a deep sleep. After sleeping for an hour or 2, she slowly woke up. She turned her wrist to look at her watch, then fell asleep and woke up again to check the time. After a few times, she adjusted her seat to a reclining position. She took out a book and flipped through it in boredom. The number of times she looked at her wrist became more and more frequent. After a while, she even picked up her backpack and took out some materials to pass the time. However, she couldn't fully immerse herself in it and couldn't come up with an answer for a long time. Phew. She exhaled and looked out of the window. All she saw were the dark clouds and the light from the wings. It was peaceful and quiet. In the speeding silver-gray MPV, Lu Qing had a piece of tape on his mouth. He looked like he was about to fall apart. Dragon King is so serious and violent even during sparring. He can't really care about that matter, right? Lu Qing wanted to cover his face and sigh. He glanced out of the window and suddenly remembered something. He struggled to sit up straight and said calmly, "Ask old Xiao to drive to the nearest import and export supermarket." His parents bought groceries there when they came to Huaqing. Alman was stunned at first. Then she said, "Mr. Lu, what do you need?" "I can buy it. You don't have to make the trip. It's fine. I'm bored at home every day. I need to go out for a walk." Lu Qing smiled and rejected his assistant's good intentions. After some traffic jams, the MPV arrived at its destination. Lu Qing put on his black-rimmed spectacles and a woolen hat. He walked to the entrance of the supermarket leisurely. Alman was stunned. After entering the supermarket, he found a trolley. Just like when he was in Connecticut, he strolled through the fresh section and other places. When he saw good ingredients, he would pick a few boxes. At the same time, he was thinking about what dishes to make and what ingredients and seasonings he needed. After strolling around leisurely, he pushed the cart full of groceries to the cashier counter. There were many old men and women in front of him. They turned back to buy other items and gave up on some that they decided not to buy in the end. After waiting patiently for a while, Lu Qing paid with his phone. Carrying 3 big bags of food, he walked out of the supermarket quickly. He didn't look much different from the pedestrians, except that he didn't seem to use much effort. Almond sat in the car and happened to see this scene. For a moment, she couldn't believe her eyes. It was her first time seeing Mr. Lu like this. She didn't expect him to have such a side to him. Chapter 677. A little past 4 in the afternoon, watching Heishui Airport, International Arrival Hall. Lu Qing was in his usual disguise. With his hands in his pockets, he patiently waited for the arrival of the flight. From time to time, he would look up at the big screen to confirm the current situation of the plane and the exit. Time flew. When the app finally gave him a reminder, he changed his posture slightly and cast his gaze towards the exit. Although he knew he would have to wait for a while, he still scanned his surroundings. As he picked up his phone to reply to Yan Jika's message, he sized up the front and reflected his surroundings. In less than 10 minutes, a familiar figure leaped into his eyes. The girl was wearing a pair of loose black casual pants and a thin white turtleneck sweater. Other than that, there was nothing else in her outfit. It was refreshing and simple. Compared to her schoolgirl look in the past, she seemed to be more intellectual now. When Lu Qing saw Yan Jika, she also noticed him. Their eyes met and seemed to be staring at each other. The corners of his mouth curled slightly. Lu Qing took a few steps forward. With one hand, he took his fairy's luggage and the 2 bags she was carrying. With the other hand, he held her soft, slender hand. The entire process was so smooth and natural that it was as though he had practiced it thousands of times. Yan Jika's body was relatively relaxed as she allowed Lu Qing to pull her forward. After a few steps, her other hand quietly reached over and wrapped around the crook of her husband's arm. She leaned her body against it. Lu Qing turned his head to look at the girl's delicate face and chuckled. I won't be bringing you out to appraise the delicacies of watching today. It's time for you to see my true culinary skills. Yan Jika was dumbfounded. My culinary skills have improved recently. I've learned quite a few new techniques. Lu Qing explained with a smile. Haven't you been practicing physical invulnerability secret arts for the past few months? The girl had a "don't lie to me" look on her face. Lu Qing immediately laughed. It's a byproduct of practicing martial arts. My control over cold, low temperature, and flames has improved. The range of what I can achieve has also expanded. I can play with quite a few intricate tricks. As for cooking, isn't it all about using fire, low temperature, and quick freezing? Hee, I can make you a real omelette, ice cream, and other low-temperature dishes. Frying an egg on the palm was a saying in Shushan. In general, it meant, if you can do this, I'll fry an egg on the palm for you. It meant that it was impossible. Yan Jika's mouth was half open as she listened to Lu Cheng's eloquent speech. She was lost for words, which made him want to pinch her cheeks. After a few seconds, the girl said in annoyance and amusement, I'm sorry. You look very proud. Of course, this is what I call a good man in the new era who is good in the hall and good in the kitchen. Lu Qing smiled complacently and asked half-jokingly, looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. Yan Jika rolled her eyes, pursed her lips, and nodded vigorously. The couple walked out of the hall and came to the parking lot. Almond was already waiting for them. Yan Jika greeted her politely. After that, Almond didn't sit in the back of the SUV. Instead, she sat in the passenger seat and looked down, ignoring the chauffeur, old Zhao. With a partition in front and back, Lu Qing pulled Yan Zhike to sit down and let her lean on him. They talked about what they had seen in Europe for the past few days. He didn't lose his composure, just like when they were in Aunt Du's car in Connecticut City. Of course, Lu Qing had been thinking about what to do when they arrived at the villa. Should I give Ku a cabinet later? My eyes must be deep, my movements must be controlled, and not too intense. While he was thinking, the SUV turned into the villa area by Shipei Lake and stopped at the door. After watching Amen and old Zhao leave, Lu Qing unlocked the door and stepped into the house. His left foot was slightly hooked as he waited for the door to close. At this moment, he felt a grip on his arm. The beautiful face in front of him was enlarged, and there was a touch of warmth on his lips. Yan Zhike's heels landed on the ground. She looked to the side and walked to the living room. She raised her chin slightly and said, "Hurry up and cook for me." Lu Qing touched his mouth and said with a smile, "Okay." After answering, he lifted the suitcase and said, "Put the things up first." "Okay." Yan Zhike looked around curiously, comparing it with her original design ideas and what she saw in the videos and photos. It seemed that without Lu Cheng's introduction, she could clearly understand the purpose of every room and the original intention of every detail. She was no stranger to it. In this wonderful feeling, she followed her husband to the second floor and entered the master bedroom. She saw the floor-to-ceiling window painted by the burning clouds, gorgeous and dreamy. She also saw the Shipei Lake not far away, glittering with golden scales. "How is it? Isn't it beautiful?" Lu Qing asked with a smile. Yan Zhike's various feelings were interrupted. She snorted and looked sideways at him. "I wanted to compliment you, but now I can't." She put down the suitcase and slowly squatted down. "Let me tidy up a little." After a few seconds, she felt something. She raised her head and saw Lu Qing looking at her with a smile. "Why are you looking at me?" Yan Zhike asked in a sweet voice. Lu Qing cleared his throat and smiled. "I'll never get tired of looking at you." Before she could scold him, he also squatted down and didn't look away. He smiled and said, "I'll help you tidy up." Yan Zhike seemed to be affected by his gaze and subconsciously looked to the side. She pushed Lu Qing up and said, "You go and cook first. I'll be right down." "Okay." Lu Qing also heard his stomach growling. Yan Zhike watched him disappear from the bedroom door. The dimples on her cheeks were outlined little by little, and the light in her eyes was overflowing. She lazily stretched her beautiful waist and quickly took out the luggage and sorted it. After doing all this, she strolled around the room, admiring every layout that had existed in her mind for a long time. After 2 rounds, she sat on the edge of the bed and lay on her back, letting her body be wrapped in the fluff and softness. She originally thought that she would feel a little unfamiliar and uncomfortable, and that she would need to spend a day or two to fully familiarize herself with the place. Who knew that this feeling was only a little, just like returning to the boudoir every winter or summer vacation. The smell of sunshine, the smell of oranges, so comfortable, I'm a little sleepy. I didn't sleep much on the plane. I'll take a short nap. I'll get up in 10 minutes. 10 minutes. In the kitchen on the first floor, the ice cream was covered in light blue crystals, and then a strong smoke came out, as if it was a fantasy. Lu Qing looked at the meat roasted by the purple flames and couldn't help but look outside. He muttered to himself, "I've made a few dishes. Why hasn't Ku come down yet?" In confusion, he stopped preparing the next dish, cleaned up the mess, and returned to the second floor. When he arrived at the bedroom door, he saw the girl lying on the bed on her side. Her eyes were closed, her eyebrows were relaxed, and she was sleeping soundly. She fell asleep just like that. Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. Looking at such a sleeping beauty, he suddenly felt a little sleepy. He quickly turned his head and went downstairs. He put the cooked hot dishes into the steamer and adjusted the mode so that they were in a warm state. As for the ice cream, he finished it in one gulp to prevent the quality of the ice cream from deteriorating. Silently returning to the bedroom, Lu Qing went to the other side and lay down beside Yenjike. Just as he came to a stop, the girl automatically turned around, wrapped her arms around him, and put her feet on him as if she was entangling him. Her breath was warm and sweet, and he smelled a fragrance. Lu Cheng's lips curved into a smile. His body and mind relaxed, and he quickly fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, after a late dinner, Lu Cheng and Yenjike took a commercial car and began their journey to the Longhu Club. According to the plan, they would live, as usual, for the next few days. They would train in the morning and wander around watching in the afternoon, experiencing different delicacies and specialties. At night, they might go out and look at the river of cars, or stay at home and burn their passion. When the last 2 rounds of the top professional competition were over, and the girl returned from Shushan or Jiangnan, they would go on a road trip that they had prepared for a long time. What are you thinking about? In the exclusive lounge, Lu Qing noticed that the girl was a little lost in thought. Thinking about the dishes you made. Yenjike pursed her lips and smiled. You can be called the ice and fire devil chef now. After saying that, she pushed Lu Qing out and said with a half smile, half anger, go train. You have to bring me around watching in the afternoon. Okay. Lu Qing smiled and walked out of the lounge in high spirits, heading for the training ground. Watching him leave, Yenjike experienced the energetic state of her husband. He's quite hard-working. Qing has to train, and I have things to do. I have important things to do too, so I won't be idle. The girl turned to Almond beside her, smiled faintly, and said, give me a copy of his, relevant financial statements. Chapter 678. At noon, Lu Qing left the volcano laboratory. Wiping his forehead and face with a white towel, he took the elevator back to his personal lounge. As a person who cared about his image, he wouldn't simply evaporate his sweat to avoid affecting the breathing of the living creatures nearby. Lu Qing opened the door and stepped in. The words he was about to say were swallowed back in his throat by the quiet atmosphere. In the office-like room, golden sunlight shone in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, dyeing everything in brilliant colors. Even Yenjike's black hair was shrouded in halos, giving her the feeling of an oil painting. The girl rested her chin on one hand and clicked on the mouse with the other. She was focused on the computer screen. Beside her was a stack of printed papers. Sometimes she frowned, sometimes she picked up a fountain pen and gently bit the end of it, sometimes she tapped on the keyboard, and sometimes she wrote something on the paper. She was completely focused on nothing else. Even when she sensed her husband coming in, she only glanced at him with her beautiful eyes that were as black as ink. Lu Qing couldn't help but laugh. He sat on the sofa and didn't say anything. He quietly watched his little fairy girl work, watching her unconsciously biting the pen. After a long time, Yenjike suddenly let out a cry of awe, and looked up at Lu Qing. She asked in a daze, What time is it? It's almost 1. Lu Qing turned on the phone screen and glanced at the time. Yenjike pursed her lips and turned her head to the side. She suddenly realized something and felt a little embarrassed. I was wondering why I always wanted to eat something. Haha, it's not too late now. It's not even noon yet. Lu Qing stood up and walked towards his little fairy girl. Yes, I want to eat crab roe dumplings, sugar cakes, shrimp dumplings, and... Yenjike muttered to herself. She couldn't help but swallow her saliva. Then she put away the paper and pen. Waving her hand, she said, We'll do the rest tomorrow. Lu Qing held her hand and smiled in agreement. I want to continue tomorrow too. In the afternoon, Lu Cheng and Yan Jika walked out of the restaurant side by side. They took the escalator to the ground floor. There are so many people over there. While the sun was setting, the girl saw a group of people surrounding a certain door on the left side of the street through the window. She didn't know what they were looking at. Lu Qing followed her line of sight and only saw a dark mass of figures. He suggested with great interest, "Let's go and have a look." Even physical invulnerability experts were curious and had the genes of onlookers. Sure. Yenjika was equally excited. When they reached the bottom floor, the young couple first exited the entrance of the mall and walked around for 100 meters before they arrived at the place where the crowd was gathered. They found that both the upper and lower floors of the mall were decorated in the same style. It was light and elegant, deep and profound, and it was very Japanese. Shinya Dojo. Lu Qing read out the name of the sign. It sounds like a martial arts club in Japan. Yenjika guessed thoughtfully. I think I've heard of it before. It's an ancient school. Lu Qing looked around and saw many women in kimonos. They stood side by side at the entrance, forming a beautiful scenery that attracted the eyes of passers-by. On the tables on both sides of the entrance were several katanas of different lengths. It's definitely a martial arts dojo. Lu Qing made a definite judgment. Yenjika's eyes turned up and suddenly laughed. Does this count as stealing our jobs? Go, Husky, kick their dojo and smash their cards. While the girl was putting on a show, Lu Qing just smiled and said, "It's nothing. Aren't there so many martial arts dojos in America? Didn't I train a group of Taoists? Well, in this day and age, everyone likes novelty. Martial arts with exotic characteristics, unusual atmosphere, and a long history, it's hard not to be popular." Yenjika bit her lower lip and smiled with dimples. They chatted for a while on this topic. She pointed at the entrance and said, "Shall we go in and have a look?" "Forget it. If I go in like this, it'll be a challenge even if it's not a challenge. And it'll be bullying the weak." Lu Qing hesitated for 2 seconds. Yenjika puffed up her cheeks and nodded slightly. "You're right. Besides, there's nothing to see in a dojo that's open to the public." On the second floor of the Shinya dojo, a girl in a red and white kimono strolled to the window and looked out at the bustling business district nearby. She was a little over 160 centimeters, with baby fat on her face. Her eyes were clear and deep. She was none other than Kori Karasawa, the successor of the Shinjai sect. "Kori-chan, what are you looking at?" A girl with slanted bangs slowly approached Kori Karasawa. Her facial features could only be described as clean and natural, but when she smiled, her eyes were curved and radiant. Kori Karasawa held a sheathed tachi in her hand and replied with a relaxed expression, "Just by looking at this bustling city, there doesn't seem to be much difference between China and America, except for the language, but the unique feeling of walking is completely different. Do you Shinjai sect people speak so strangely? It feels like a real monk." The girl who asked the question smiled. "Let's talk about you instead. Why did you suddenly apply for a visa to come to China? Didn't you just enter the realm of God not long ago?" Kori Karasawa scanned the streets and confirmed a few surveillance points. Suddenly, she sighed and said, "I'm here to fulfill a wish. During the King of Youth Pro League, I clearly advanced to the inhuman stage earlier than China's Pinkuan. Yet, I lost to him. It was partly because I didn't use a real weapon, and partly because he was indeed very strong. That time, I told myself to challenge him again with all my might. When I returned from the war-torn zones 2 months ago, I realized that even Pinkuan's speed of advancement had surpassed mine. I didn't want to wait any longer. I was afraid I would lose my courage if this continued, so, after I mastered all the sword techniques of the Shinjai sect, I immediately applied to come here." Peng Liyun, why didn't you go straight to Hudong? Asked the girl with slanted bangs with a slight frown. I wanted to walk around for a while to build up my momentum. Looking down, Kori Karasawa was stunned when she saw a familiar figure. It was Lu Qing with his black-framed glasses and dark beanie. Lu Qing sensed the pull of her aura. Lifting his head, he looked towards the window on the second floor and met a pair of eyes that were as deep as an ancient well. Kori Karasawa naturally gathered her momentum. Her mind was on alert as her right hand reached for the hilt of her saber instinctively. She was like a divine weapon sealed in a case. She had endured and waited for a long time, polishing her edge from time to time and honing herself. She was about to shine brightly and cleave the heavens. At this moment, she felt as though Lu Qing had disappeared. Before her was boundless darkness and majestic stars. If she got too close, she would melt. If she got too far, she would freeze. It was so vast, so magnificent, yet so dangerous and so terrifying. Kori Karasawa felt as though if she were to strike with her saber, she would only be able to create a few ripples. It was just like how she used to train her swordsmanship under the stars. Her target could be a waterfall, a bamboo forest, or a boulder, but never the night sky. That would be a waste of energy and wouldn't be of any use. Her right hand rested on the hilt of her saber for a long time. The universe receded and the stars faded. Lu Qing retracted his gaze and pulled Yan Zhike to the other end of the street. What happened just now? Asked the girl, unable to hide her confusion. Lu Cheng's lips curled slightly as he replied calmly, a former opponent. She has also advanced to physical invulnerability. On the second floor, Kori Karasawa took a deep breath as she watched the two disappear into the distance. She had long heard about his advancement to physical invulnerability. She had also seen his recent battles and understood his current standards. However, compared to her previous encounters, he seemed to have undergone some fundamental changes. He had become very strange, so strange that there was no precedent. It was also strange that she couldn't draw her saber. Seeing Kori Karasawa remain silent for a long time, the girl with the slanted bangs waved her hand and said, "Kori-chan." Ha! Kori Karasawa tilted her head in confusion and returned to her senses. "What are you thinking about?" asked the girl with the slanted bangs after some deliberation. Kori Karasawa pondered for a good 10 seconds before replying, "There are too many physical invulnerability mighty ones in China." The girl with the slanted bangs waited for her to continue. Kori Karasawa's face darkened slightly as she continued, "And we have too few." Without waiting for the girl with the slanted bangs to ask further, she continued, "That's why we can't organize such large-scale professional competitions and title matches. We can't be like their physical invulnerability mighty ones, who have to constantly improve their Tao and techniques." "That's true." The girl with the slanted bangs couldn't lie to herself and nodded in agreement. At this moment, Kori Karasawa suddenly smiled sweetly and said in an ethereal tone, "Do you think I can stay in China and participate in such competitions? Not only do they have sects, but they also have the union and clubs. They should be able to invite foreigners, right?" Chapter 679. Lu Qing naturally didn't know about Kori Karasawa's change of heart, nor was he interested in finding out. After spending a few days with Yan Zhike, he sent her on her way back to Shushan. After 2 more rounds of competition, this year's top-tier professional competition finally came to an end. Longhu Club lived up to expectations and won the title of world number 1. Lu Qing, on the other hand, felt a little uneasy as he had only played 3 main roles. He secretly made up his mind to play a more important role in the new competition after the Chinese New Year. For this, he gave up on the other challenge tournaments in January. He planned to relax, sharpen his blade, and accumulate experience. Apart from this goal, he also wanted to pick the key players in the new round of 5 title competitions. He wanted to strive for a breakthrough ranking and even fight for the right to challenge. This was a goal that Wisdom King, Shi Hai, couldn't achieve even after a year and a half of physical invulnerability. Only warrior sage, Qian Donglu, and a few others had achieved it. However, Lu Qing explained it to Yan Zhike in his own words. If a man doesn't have dreams, what's the difference between him and a salted fish? At the beginning of January, Yan Zhike returned to Huaqing again. Lu Qing brought her on a 6-day road trip around Guangnan. The couple washed away the mental fatigue from the previous year and glowed with renewed vigor. After they agreed to spend the Chinese New Year together in Connecticut, Lu Qing sent off his little fairy again. He began to visit Dragon King, Empress Luo, and the rest to wish them a happy new year. He planned to return home early and spend more time with his parents. Before that, he flew to the northern city of Huiyuan and took advantage of his free time to visit his best friend. This was the hometown of talker, Kai Zongming. It wasn't a big place, but it wasn't small either. He couldn't reach there directly by air and had to transfer to a high-speed rail. Little Ming, who always dressed simply, waited at the exit with a look of disdain. Looking at the disguised Lu Qing, he said in annoyance, "Can't you have King come a few days earlier or later?" Tisk, Lu Qing used his tone to express his disdain and deep meaning. He knew that Casanova's girlfriend, Fang Yuan, would be on vacation these few days. However, wasn't this pretty good? Lu Qing chuckled to himself and followed Kai Zongming to his black SUV. He opened the trunk and put his luggage inside without a care in the world. "Why don't you try our special barbecue first?" Kai Zongming suggested. "Sure. Didn't you always say that Huiyuan's roasted lamb tail is the best?" Lu Qing recalled Talker's previous boast. Kai Zongming skillfully turned the steering wheel and said, "You'll know once you try. The meat is very lively, very tender, and very fragrant. Once you bite into it, that feeling. When I was in middle school, because I practiced martial arts for 3 days and 2 days, after self-study at night, I was often very hungry. Every time I didn't go home, I would order 10 skewers of lamb's tail outside the school. 10 skewers. TSK, that taste is something I will never forget for the rest of my life. Damn, you used to have a lot of pocket money." When I was in high school, I had to save for a few days to afford barbecue skewers. Not to mention when I was in junior high school. I even bought breakfast on credit. Lu Cheng's exclamation was not the main point at all. Please respect a rich second generation. Xiao Ming gave a concise and comprehensive answer. After chatting for more than 10 minutes, he drove to a rather bustling commercial street and found a barbecue shop at the back. 40 skewers of lamb's tail. Do you want large kidneys? Kai Zongming picked up the menu and looked at Lu Qing with an ambiguous smile. What's with that expression? Lu Qing made a disdainful gesture. You're sleeping next to me tonight. I'm afraid you'll attack me at night if you eat too much large kidneys. Kai Zongming made a dirty joke. Then he rattled off a list of dishes to the waiter. While waiting for the barbecue, Lu Qing, as a guest and a junior, asked with concern, "Hey, talker, how's your dad's body recently? His complexion is better, but..." Sigh, he won't listen. The doctor asked him to stop drinking, but he won't. He has to drink a glass every day at noon and at night. When I tried to persuade him, he would get angry and say that there's no point in living like that. He'd rather die. Kai Zongming spread his hands and said, "What can I do? I'm also very desperate. It shouldn't be a problem to drink a little, as long as you don't overdo it." Lu Qing knew nothing about this, so he could only comfort him casually. Following this topic, Kai Zongming talked about his life in the past few months. "I find that doing business is really tiring. I have to force a smile every day, entertain people I don't want to entertain, and say things I don't want to say. You've learned to be sentimental." Lu Qing comforted him in a joking way. Kai Zongming was angry and amused. Are you here to do crosstalk with me? But my family's business has been going downhill in the past 2 years. Sighed, the whole industry is entering the twilight period. The smaller scale companies are going bankrupt one after another. I want to take this opportunity to slowly liquidate and let my relatives and friends understand the direction of the wind. They can quit. If they want to take over, I can directly transfer it to them. What about after that? Wouldn't you be unemployed then? Lu Qing teased. Kai Zongming snorted and waved his hand heroically. My family is still strong. Did you see that commercial street just now? 1/3 of the shops are ours. Damn. Lu Qing laughed and said, then should I call you Kai Banqing? Can't you count? It's obviously only 1/3. Little Ming retorted. Then he sighed with emotion, then I'll be free and easy. I'll continue to practice martial arts while doing live streaming. I can live at home for half a year and stay in the capital for the other half. Live streaming. Lu Qing caught the keyword and asked in confusion. Kai Zongming laughed and said, I've been watching live streaming of martial arts competitions on the internet recently and found that many commentators are not only bad at martial arts, but also boring. So I just casually made a live streaming room and planned to show them what professionalism and style are. Then I'll help you with a small advertisement later, Lu Qing said with interest. Kai Zongming hurriedly waved his hand, no, not at the moment. Why? Lu Qing was surprised. Kai Zongming answered with a serious face, I want to rely on myself to try. Without waiting for Lu Qing to speak, he pointed to himself and said, do you see my handsome face? This time I want to rely purely on my own talent. This kind of pain is not something an ordinary guy like you can understand. Get lost. Lu Qing and Kai Zongming looked at each other and laughed together. After laughing for a while, Little Ming wiped the corner of his eyes and said, to be honest, this is just for fun. If there is a need in the future, we'll talk about it. At this time, the first batch of skewers was served and the two began to eat. After eating and drinking, Lu Qing praised the sheep's tail while walking with Kai Zongming in the commercial street to digest the food. Here, the place where I started to practice martial arts. While walking, Little Ming pointed to a martial arts dojo by the street. The name of the dojo was, as expected, ordinary. It was called Huiyuan Stars. When the kidnapping happened, Lu Qing recalled the conversation in the past. Yes. Kai Zongming smiled and said with half emotion and half longing, every time I pass by here, I think that if I'm really free, I'll still try to practice martial arts. Not necessarily on this path, but at least I'll have a taste of the dance stage. Otherwise, I won't be satisfied. Damn it, what do you mean by round and bright? You make it sound like a man can get pregnant. Lu Cheng's mouth twitched and said, Talker, I think you shouldn't do a live broadcast as a commentator. Do a live broadcast as a crosstalk. Yes, you'll definitely be popular. Just as Kai Zongming was about to reply, an old man in a black woolen coat walked out of the dojo. He was about 60 years old, still had black hair, and looked hale and hearty. If not for the obvious wrinkles on his face, it wouldn't be an exaggeration to call him middle-aged. Kai Zongming. The old man glanced over and was stunned for half a second. Hello, Coach Yu. Little Ming greeted with a smile. Then, he lowered his voice and said to Lu Qing, I'm the martial arts initiation coach. Old man Yu walked over with his hands behind his back. He sized up the student in front of him and said with half a smile and half a sigh, You're full of vitality and didn't stop training. I often tell others that you're the one I regret the most. If you had been more serious, focused, and worked harder, you definitely wouldn't be where you are now. After sighing, he didn't say anything else. After a few words of greeting, he patted Kai Zhongming on the shoulder and slowly turned to leave. Your initiation coach is pretty good. Lu Qing listened quietly and sighed with emotion as he looked at the back of old man Yu. It's been so many years, but he still remembers Talker. Kai Zhongming chuckled and said, Coach Yu is indeed a good person. He's an elder worthy of respect. The only problem is that he's too prideful and likes to take advantage of others. Ah. What do you mean? Lu Qing asked, amused. Kai Zhongming pointed at the entrance of the Martial Arts Center and said, Songqing University Martial Arts Club used to be quite famous in the country. Once, when I passed by here, I saw my poster. It said something like outstanding student and Lu Qing and Lin Kei's teammate. It's so King embarrassing. Ha! Lu Qing laughed out loud. Old man Yu strolled down the street and subconsciously looked back. He happened to see Lu Qing and Kai Zhongming's departing figures and felt that they were both familiar. I don't know them. He smiled and shook his head. He continued to turn into a nearby neighborhood. Suddenly, he froze on the spot. He overlapped another figure with a certain expert. Even though it was disguised, it was definitely him. Old man Yu hurriedly looked back, but the figure had already disappeared without a trace. For a moment, he was disappointed and his heart ached. It was like there was a stack of money on the ground, but he didn't notice it and couldn't pick it up. He remained in this state for a long time. Even when he returned home, old man Yu was still sighing. He didn't even taste the supper his wife made. What's wrong? His wife asked, puzzled. I didn't. Old man Yu blamed himself. Sigh, what a waste. My heart aches. What a good opportunity. My heart aches. Chapter 680. After 2 days in Huiyuan, Lu Qing received a call from Empress Luo just as he was about to return. The military has a mission for you, Ning Zidong went straight to the point. What mission? Lu Qing wasn't dumb enough to agree right away. Ning Zidong chuckled. It's nothing difficult. A faction has formed in the war-torn zone to the south of our country. It's involved in the cultivation, manufacturing, and trafficking of drugs. It's seriously affecting the peace of the border region. After a long discussion, we've come to an agreement with the Americans to conduct a joint cleanup operation. This has something to do with the Americans. Lu Qing asked sharply. How else do you think Ta Gu and his gang were able to grow so strong under our watch? The American intelligence agencies are best at such things. Instigating, subverting, disrupting order, fostering power, creating chaos. Ning Zidong replied sarcastically. Anyway, Ta Gu and his gang aren't enough weight on the enemy's scales. Then what do I need to do? Lu Qing didn't beat around the bush and asked about his own mission. Support. Don't let any of Ta Gu and his gang slip through the net, Ning Zidong said succinctly. Lu Qing came to a sudden realization and answered his own question. Is there a physical invulnerability mighty one among them? Based on the current intelligence, there isn't, Ning Zidong denied. Lu Qing was confused. Then why don't you send me instead of an inhuman or a mutant who's good at tracking? Everyone has their own specializations. Don't worry. We don't lack such talents. Ning Zidong chuckled. Aren't I redundant? Lu Qing couldn't figure it out. It doesn't make a difference whether I'm there or not, just to be safe, just to be safe. Ning Zidong emphasized twice before explaining with a smile, this is to give you more opportunities to complete missions and accumulate merits. You'll be able to gain the qualifications to study the restriction sect, clear Jade chapter as soon as possible. Otherwise, your master will be nagging you about it every other day. I see. Lu Qing finally understood the whole story. Thinking about the restriction sect, clear Jade chapter, he was filled with anticipation and desire for the mission. I can't fall behind the Taoist priest here. So, Mr. Taogu, I'm sorry. But you all deserve to die. Ning Zidong continued nagging. Do you understand now? In short, this is a simple mission. Your existence is mainly to guard against accidents, and you may not have the opportunity to act. Simple mission. Lu Qing gasped and said half-jokingly, maybe it's because I've read too many movies and novels. The more simple the mission is, the more difficult it will be. You said it yourself. Those are movies and novels. How can reality be so dramatic? Ning Zidong replied, amused. Besides, this kind of thing has nothing to do with whether the mission is simple or not. It all depends on the luck of the person involved. I think I have the potential. Lu Qing silently mocked himself. Alright, get back to watching as soon as possible. It'll take at most 2 or 3 days from the military base. It won't affect your vacation, Ning Zidong said and hung up the phone. Lu Qing held his phone and pondered for a while. Then he called his mother and told her that he had something urgent to attend to and would be back a few days later. Then he told Yan Zhike that he had accepted a mission, but he didn't mention the details because of the confidentiality clause. He only said that it was a very simple mission to earn merits for himself. After doing all this, he got Amen to help with the subsequent procedures for changing the contract. What's up? Kai Zongming stopped his car outside the high-speed rail station and asked without hiding his curiosity. Yeah, Lu Qing nodded solemnly. He got out of the car and grabbed his luggage. Seeing his serious attitude, little Ming was a little scared and didn't know what to say. Just then, Lu Qing turned around and waved his arm. He revealed a bright smile and said, Goodbye, I'm going to save the world. Save the world. F***ck, you lied to my feelings. Kai Zongming raised his middle finger and shouted, Get lost. Shuttling through the middle reaches of the Yalin River between the mountains, at the temporary Sino-American Joint Command Center. Dressed in a dark military uniform, Smith combed his hair back neatly. Wearing a pair of black sunglasses and white gloves, he looked around curiously. He was excited at one moment and nervous at the next. After Lu Cheng's guidance, the former Spider-Man had found a capable ascetic from the mission sect to be his mentor. He used a method that was close to self-abuse to hone his body and sublimate his soul. After a long time, he finally evolved again and reached the threshold of danger grade. Because of this, the Department of Homeland Security placed him as a key grooming target. They exchanged him with the Foreign Intelligence Agency for 2 years and sent him to the war-torn zones for training. Your first time? Asked the burly black officer beside Smith with a smile. Yes. Smith nodded frankly. Previously, I was only here for surveillance or security missions in China. I've only been here for a week. The black officer extended his arm and patted him on the shoulder. He laughed heartily. Don't worry, joint missions like this have always been very safe. You'll be able to adapt easily. Really? Smith was pleasantly surprised as he asked in return. Without a doubt. The black officer pointed around and said, You can observe carefully and confirm the situation of everyone in the command center. Their standards and levels will determine the difficulty of this joint mission. I know that. Smith answered softly. Just a moment ago, his boss had explained to him one by one. In the Joint Command Center, half of them were commanders and staff officers. There was no lack of experts who had reached the danger grade. The other half were the upper echelons of the Special Operations Forces. Some were experienced in the mountains, some were skilled in combat, but only a few were at the danger grade. From the looks of it, the Joint Sweep mission is at the danger grade. With his current strength and enhanced spider web, as long as he wasn't reckless or impulsive, he could indeed guarantee his safety. As Smith's thoughts raced, the black officer led him to the door. You know. That's good. There's no need to waste time. Anyway, remember, this is a preparation that includes unexpected situations. The actual danger will be even lower. Have a good sleep later and maintain your mental strength for the operation. Phew, then I'm really relieved. Smith secretly heaved a sigh of relief. It's better to start simple as a newcomer. The higher-ups are still taking care of me. At this time, the door of the Joint Command Center was suddenly pushed open. A few Hua nationals swarmed in from outside. The figure of the leader suddenly jumped into Smith's eyes. The lines of his facial features were firm, his eyes were dark and deep, his hair was cut short, and his appearance was ordinary, but he had a steady and intimidating aura. This figure was so familiar that Smith was stunned on the spot. A few words suddenly appeared in his mind. Lu. Terror grade. Troublemaker. Terror grade. Again, oh. Smith stared blankly and silently muttered in Hua Nation, Motherf ***. P.S. It's a bit of a language block. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.